OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
A very good morning. Welcome along to OTB AM, Friday, 29th of January. Eoin, January's nearly over. The good news keeps on rolling in.
Oh, thank God. What a brilliant piece of news to bring us this morning. Thank you for that. Your public service done.
I know. Yeah, they've offered nothing else today, and let's face it, that's not a bad start. The game last night, Liverpool are back.
You don't think so? I'm buying it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that Liverpool have found their mojo again. But I'm getting the sense here that you've baited me with something here that suggests that you don't actually believe that they're back.
Well, I'm sort of reticent to introduce poor old Henry Winter at the London Times into the conversation again this week. He's taken an awful battering, most of which he doesn't deserve, but it's a theme of reaction to the game last night that exists not only in his paper but elsewhere, I think, including a little bit last night in the TV analysis. But the idea that Liverpool's old swagger is back, I think, in fact, might be the headline in his piece. And I didn't really feel that was the case after beating Spurs last night. You know, like you consider the nature of the 3 goals that Liverpool got, the individual mistakes that were at fault. Like you had Darren Lorries for the first goal. You had Doherty, who seems to have dodged a bullet big time in relation to the second goal, only because he was outdone in terms of his mistake with Hugo Lloris for the second goal as well, and then Joe Rodon for the last one, for the Mane goal. In fact, the best goal that Liverpool got last night was ruled out by VAR. But yeah, so I just wondered, like, we'd be having a very different conversation if those 3 mistakes weren't made last night. The Son goal after 3 minutes, like, is ruled out by the width of a heel, you know what I mean? And suddenly, like, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who himself had like a cracking game last night, admitted as much after the game that, like, if that goal stands and you know, it was very fine margins, the game takes on a very different shape. So I wouldn't necessarily be convinced of Liverpool swagger being back, of Liverpool themselves being back. I think that there will be a halo effect of what happened last night. Like, the net result can be that it helps their confidence and helps them turn some sort of a corner. But then again, you look at the fixture list that they have upcoming. I certainly wasn't convinced by them last night on that they were swashbuckling Liverpool.
I think I'm not sure I agree with that. Like, there's no question that you're right about the fixture list, that this question can't be answered properly until about 20 days' time, until after they've played that Merseyside derby against Everton on the 20th of February. All 6 of those next fixtures are vital. Like, you've got West Ham away in the next game. You've got the Des Kelly derby against Brighton and Hove Albion after that. The revenge mission after what happened last time. Then City, then Leicester City, then Leipzig, and then Everton. Like, fixture lists don't get a whole pile tougher than that if you're a team in the Premier League and in the Champions League. And we're going to see if this is sustainable over the next little while. Here's the thing. It's not like Trent Alexander-Arnold has popped up with this outrageous performance from his own standards last night. It's not as if he is it's not as if he's Cedric playing for Arsenal the other night, where he comes up with this amazing performance and you're like, not sure if that guy can actually play that well every single week. With Trent Alexander-Arnold's performance last night, you're like, I have seen evidence of this guy performing every single week like that just last season. So can I believe that this is real, that what he showed last night is a sustainable indicator of his form for the next couple of weeks? I absolutely can believe that. And the same goes for the front 3. Yes, there were defensive mistakes from Tottenham Hotspur, but this front 3 has not been humming at all over the last couple of weeks. Just the sharpness in front of goal has been poor. Liverpool has been getting off around 12 to 16 shots per game over the last few weeks, but they've been getting very few of them on target. Last night they had 14 shots and 7 of them were on target. The last time they had a shot-to-shot on target ratio like that was the Crystal Palace game, where they had 14 shots and 8 of them on target. 7 of them ended up being goals. And that felt like a dot that was a bit of an outlier at the time, because it was proved to be the case afterwards anyway, when they ended up going on a terrible run of form. But it feels last night, against better opposition than Crystal Palace, they managed to have a similar enough hit rate, certainly in terms of their sharpness in front of goal. And for me, it looks a little bit more sustainable. Like Spurs, of all the teams in the Premier League, bar Manchester City, had conceded the least amount of goals going into last night. And Liverpool still managed to look fairly well-oiled against them up front. And that, for me, has been the issue in recent weeks. That front three for Liverpool. And, of course, it's not a problem in isolation. It's about what the midfielders have been doing for them, what the full-backs have been doing for them. It has all felt a little bit disjointed. That was not the case last night. And if I was to predict if this is sustainable or not, I would definitely be on the side of the fence that, yeah, this is, and they are back, and they might have a big say yet in this title race.
I don't want to be like the Grinch after Christmas here, right? So, like, I think that if you're a Liverpool supporter this morning, there's loads of reasons from that game last night to feel slightly hopeful about things. Like, at the sharpest front of goal, even, like, some of those goals last night were almost offered on the plate, and you had the Mane miss very, very early on. There were a couple of misses where they were one-on-one with the keeper. I think the offside flag might have gone up for a couple of them anyway, but still, they had to play the chances out and weren't necessarily hitting the target. So, like, I would be concerned about that. I'd be concerned about the ease at which the goals were given to them. I'd be massively concerned about the fact that, like, describing Joe Gomez as injury prone is putting it mildly, and he's out again now for God knows how long. And
Matip.
Matip, and he's out again for God knows how long. And so Liverpool are still saying we may get somebody, we may not. We'll have to see what the market is doing. Like, you'd like to hope that they've spent the last 3 or 4 weeks, despite saying publicly that we're not actually really going to buy, we're not going to get somebody in here, that they've been doing their damnedest to try and identify that. I think they were talking about Martin Skirtle on the TV last night. Jake Humphries threw a question to Peter Crouch about Martin Skirtle and what a good get that would be. And you could see the look of Peter Crouch going, all right, Martin Skirtle is still playing football. That's cool. But bringing somebody of his experience in, and probably his age profile, is absolutely fine for the job that they need over the next 3 or 4 months. There are reasons to be hopeful, I think, if you're a Liverpool supporter this morning. But I also think that there are plenty of caveats for it.
Of course there are. Like, any team who has, I guess, overperformed relative to their last few weeks, you can always say that there are enough caveats for it. But I think that they've got enough credit in the bank for this not to be false hope if you're a Liverpool fan waking up this morning. I think you'll have seen enough over the last few seasons that you recognise the performance last night. You're not blown away, really, by it, because you became very familiar with that sort of performance last night, like last season and the season before. And the thing about Liverpool is the way they play, they force the opposition into so many mistakes. I don't think, now in fairness, I don't think a lot of those mistakes last night were the sort of counter-pressing, forced mistakes. I think it was actually just poor individual, I guess, skill from a Tottenham standpoint. But at the same time, there was a similarity to last season in that they were forcing the opposition at times into certain mistakes, or at least getting in and around them, and like getting to rub it green in certain areas. They didn't get that for the goal, as you say, that was ruled out for handball for Mo Salah last night. But, like, I mean, he's somebody who didn't even get on the score sheet last night, and like, it just kind of feels that he's dormant and waiting to explode with a hat-trick at the moment, because he hasn't looked like doing it in recent weeks, but last night he did. Like, they're going to get a penalty or something in the next game. He'll end his Premier League drought, and then he'll be up and away again, and he'll bang in another couple in a game. I've got no doubt about it. I just think that there's too much talent in that team, and too much good things happened last night for this not to be manifested in some sort of reality over the next month.
Like, it's hard to feel that the net winners over the last week, particularly, haven't been Manchester City, obviously. If you were, I don't know, let's say Manchester City, let's say you were Arsenal, and you had your choice of who to play currently, let's say hypothetically, whether it was that current Liverpool team or the current Manchester United team, given everything that's gone on over the last week, last game of the season to get yourselves into the top four, who would you rather right now?
Manchester United or Liverpool?
Yeah.
Oh, Manchester United is who you want to play right now. Like, without question. I think, like, especially if you're Arsenal, given that they beat Manchester United earlier in the season and got beaten by Liverpool. Like, comparatively, if you're looking at it styles-wise, their style is more suited to playing Manchester United. They're not a better squad than United, but they probably have a style to win that fight. We'll see tomorrow night. Like, I'm sure I'll be eating my words tomorrow night when Manchester United smash Arsenal 5-0 or something like that. But I think that they would probably pick United to play against. And, like, you talk about not being able to believe in whether or not a team's quality is sustainable. Like Manchester United are the living embodiment of that at the moment. And if you've got questions about Liverpool at the back, then those same questions pertain to Manchester United. And we saw that with the winning goal for Sheffield United the other night, like just a shambolic display of defending at the back. Like Liverpool have been prone to that this season, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, while he had a great game last night, has been prone to shambolic positioning at times this season. But I think that the base is almost lower from United, and you kind of expect more regular mistakes from that defence, even though Liverpool really don't have one.
Yeah, we'll get into it with Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Wrap a little bit later on, just get his thoughts on the game last night as well. Certainly interesting stuff, and interesting to get your thoughts as well at some point this morning. Do lash them into us on whatever platform it is you're looking at us or listening to us this morning, because there's plenty to come. You are watching OTB AM. We are here live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's 20 to 8 on this Friday morning. We've so much to come between now and 10 a.m. this morning, but I believe Phil is standing by. Phil, are you there? No, we're going to come back to Phil, I think. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 a.m. this morning. Gareth Roberts, as I mentioned, of the Anfield Wrap, coming away to give you all his inside thoughts on the game last night, as well as the torrent of abuse that came his way after his appearance on the show last week, for suggesting that the absence of fans was having a massive impact on Liverpool's performance. So we'll get Gareth's thoughts on all of that a little bit later on. We'll let you know what's happening across the back pages of the newspapers today. Our hashtag OTB Future series continues in the company of the coach's coach, Liam Moggan. A little bit later this morning. That'll be an interesting one after a series of interesting chats during the week, and more to come as well on that. OTB AM's cold cuts, all are the opposite of the hot takes of the week. Some good stuff in there. I can give you a bit of a spoiler that Richard Keys does feature again this week after topping the poll last week. It'll be a theme. Alan Quinlan in a quite weekend ahead, but a couple of interesting talking points, including the potential of CJ Standard to join Bordeaux. We'll get into it, Quinny, a bit later on. Phil is going to pick his must-watch games for the weekend later in the day. Crappy quiz coming your way. Stay tuned for that. And then a bit of Stuart Lancaster from the show last night as well. So that's all coming your way between now and 10 a.m. this morning. But Phil Egan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you doing?
All good. You flying it this morning? Liverpool are back?
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. 28 days later, huh? That's their first league win of 2021. And,
is that what it's been?
Yeah, but who's counting? Nearly 500 minutes without a goal. First league win in 6. And do you know what? You kind of got the feeling when Mane missed that early chance and then Son put the ball in the net, you thought this is going to be one of those nights, isn't it? And the last thing you want to do when you're on a bad run of form is have to go chasing a game against a Jose Mourinho side. But yeah, maybe the fine margins are starting to swing in Liverpool's favour. Obviously, another night where they pick up an injury, obviously before the game and during the game, and actually during half time I went down to make a cup of tea, did a few things, came back to the TV, and I saw Nat Phillips limbering up on the half on the touchline. I was wondering what was going on, but it was no surprise that he was coming on to replace Joel Matip. Unfortunately, as good as he is when he's on the pitch, he's unbelievable, but he's just not on the pitch enough. So yeah, surely Liverpool have to go sign in the centre half before Monday, because it was a big win for them last night. Obviously, they play West Ham on Sunday, but you're thinking of the bigger picture. There's still a Champions League to contest as well. They've a good chance of beating RB Leipzig, and obviously Jota will be coming back into the team. Who knows when you might see Virgil van Dijk? So they have to get that centre half in, because they don't have a senior centre half now at the moment. So yeah, but the front three looked very good, and I think you can always tell when Firmino plays well, Liverpool tend to play very well. So he was excellent last night.
They're back, Phil. That's all I'm taking from that. That's that signed and sealed. What's the top of the menu this morning for you?
Yeah, well, we'll start with that. Obviously, your first league win in 6 for Liverpool, first of 2021, and that has Liverpool up to 4th place. They're 4 points behind leaders Manchester City, and City have a game in hand, but bear in mind, City go to Anfield in less than 2 weeks. So if Liverpool can get their wins against West Ham and Brighton before that, who knows what Manchester City will do before that. They've got Sheffield United and Burnley before they go to Anfield, but maybe that game at Anfield could have a bit of a say and maybe delay things, because as things stand, Liverpool are playing catch-up and Manchester City look irresistible. But that Roberto Firmino goal before half-time was Liverpool's first league goal in 482 minutes. And Trent Alexander-Arnold and Sadio Mane also on target. And Højbjerg got the Spurs goal, cracking goal. But the bad news for Liverpool, I mentioned, obviously, was Joe Matip going off injured. Spare thought for Jose Mourinho. Harry Kane went off injured at half-time. His ankle picked up 2 knocks. And Mourinho said it after the game. If Harry Kane's going off, then, you know, it's a problem. We know Harry Kane has obviously had injury problems, but it looked pretty bad. You had a feeling that when he actually sat down at half-time, that ankle would probably tighten up a bit, so he didn't appear for the second half. And Spurs didn't really lay a glove on Liverpool in that second half after that Højbjerg goal. Some news out of Celtic in the last few minutes. Chief Executive Peter Lowell has decided to retire from his position in June. So he's been in the role for 17 years. So when he took over in 2003, since then, 29 trophies, 13 league titles, 4 domestic trebles, obviously got to the last 16 of the Champions League on 3 occasions. But a lot of unrest at Celtic this season. This was the season they were meant to win 10 in a row. And to say it's been shambolic is an understatement. Obviously, what went on in Dubai, how Neil Lennon is still in the job, we'll never know. They're 23 points behind Stephen Gerrard's Rangers. Now, they still have 3 games in hand, but there's a good chance that they won't win the 3 games in hand. And this was the season that Celtic were meant to really be on it and do something that neither Celtic or Rangers had done and win 10 in a row. And I think when the fans actually start coming back into the stadium, if Peter Lowell was still in the job, I'm sure the Celtic fans would have voiced their opinion towards him, but he's decided to call it a day in June.
Yeah, that is interesting stuff, and I'm sure there's a strong cohort of Celtic fans out there delighted what you talk about that trophy profile, and it's pretty sensational. Yeah,
it is, but I mean, all that great work that they did has all been undone by this season. This was the one season they were meant to get it right, and I think a lot of Celtic fans will find it hard to forgive the club for a long time after what's gone on this year. Even, look, teams go through bad spells, and if Neil Lennon, if things weren't going well, if you're going to replace him, I mean, the damage is done now, and you know, Rangers look like they're going from strength to strength. Just some transfer news. Obviously, I mentioned the transfer window will close on Monday. Jesse Lingard's going to complete his move from Manchester United to West Ham today. It's a loan move. It's believed to be no option to buy for West Ham at the end of the season, but who knows how things will go. Shane Lowry's 2 under par after 14 holes on day 2 of the Dubai Desert Classic. Scotland's Robert McIntyre leads there on 8 under. Padraig Harrington will resume in around an hour's time on 1 under. Graham McDowell is going to miss the cut for the second weekend in a row. He's 5 over par. He's in the same group as Lowry, so just 4 holes to play. Rory McIlroy's 4 under after the first round of the Farmers Insurance Open in California, where Patrick Reed and Alex Noren share the lead on 8 under. Seamus Power is 6 over. Now, while the Liverpool and Tottenham game was going on, the RTE Sports Person of the Year award was going on, and Katie Taylor's won it for the second time after defending all her belts in 2020. Obviously had the rematch with Delphine Pursoon. And Limerick then, good night for them. John Kiley, Manager of the Year. Limerick Hurlers, Team of the Year. And 17-year-old Oisin O'Callaghan from Limerick was named the Young Sports Person of the Year. He is the Junior World Downhill Mountain Bike Champion. So quite the night for Limerick. Quite the year for Limerick.
Good stuff, Phil. Thanks a million for that. Coming up on 10 to 8, we'll be back to Phil a little bit later in the show to get his thoughts on all things football as well. So that is Phil for the minute. We'll be back to him a little bit later on. We're going to continue with our Liverpool chat. Plenty of comments coming in. We'll bring them your way in just a couple of moments' time. But I'm delighted to say that Gareth Roberts, for the second Friday running of the Anfield Wrap, joins us on the line. Morning to you, Gareth.
Good morning, lads. Okay?
That's it. So, crisis over, right?
Well, it feels a little bit like that. I mean, it's much, much better waking up in the morning knowing that Liverpool have won, knowing that we've sort of laid such a big glove on a rival, which Spurs are. And yeah, it feels much better than last week, definitely.
Yeah, we've just been having a debate a little bit earlier on in terms of I'm being slightly facetious in asking you that question because I'm not 100% convinced, Gareth, that maybe they are back. I think when you look at some of the opportunities that came their way, the goals obviously all coming from mistakes. They're putting themselves in the position to get the goals, but a slight sense that the performance of Trent Alexander-Arnold notwithstanding, that maybe it's papered over the cracks a little bit and there's still some fairly deep-rooted issues there.
I'm not sure. I think I'd go the other way and say that in a lot of Liverpool's games that they haven't won, you've seen promise there, you've seen good things there, and it hasn't felt like we're a million miles away from winning those games. And, you know, we've been a little bit unlucky. We haven't been great in front of goal, as you've referenced. And then there's obviously the issue at the back, which got even worse last night, knowing that, you know, Fabinho wasn't lining up before the first whistle, and knowing that Mata wouldn't be lining up after the half-time whistle. So I think to be coming through that adversity, to still be in the mix, which you've got to say Liverpool are 4 points off the top of the league, and everyone was writing us off not so long ago. This is a big win. We stayed in it. There's a chink of life for Liverpool. You know, only the other week, everyone was talking up Man United. Now they've been beaten by Sheffield United, and the picture looks slightly different there. Obviously, Manchester City's the one everyone's worried about. They've got the game in hand. But for me, Liverpool had to win last night. It was almost cup final type stuff in terms of staying in there with a chance of doing something title-wise this season. I'm not saying they will. I'm saying they've got a chance now, though. And the chance would have gone if we hadn't won last night. And you say, you know, that it was papering over the cracks. Well, there's only one side creating big chances last night, and that was Liverpool. Tottenham Hotspur only had one shot in the second half. It was a worldie that went in the back of the net that he'll probably never hit like that again in his life. It was Liverpool creating the chances, and Trent Alexander, who you mentioned, his performance was massive because his form all season hasn't quite been there. He hasn't been the Trent that we know and love. But last night it was there. You know, from the first whistle almost, he's setting up Sadio Mane. And all game, defensively and offensively, he was much, much better. And he's been key to Liverpool over the last couple of years. He's been our playmaker almost. So to have him back looking more like himself, I think was massive. And a shout for James Milner as well. I thought having him on the pitch made a big difference to Liverpool.
What, like you talk about the Liverpool chances, like the chances that Tottenham did create, and obviously they had the ball in the back of the net after 3 minutes, which could have given the game a very different look, and an opportunity shortly after that as well. But whatever chances Tottenham did create, and whatever chances teams do tend to create against Liverpool, are coming by and large from that ball over the top, and they look very susceptible to it. I suppose maybe a twofold question about your thoughts with the current roster of players that they have, and their maybe incapacity to deal with that, possibly being related to the experience of the players that are there, and off the back of that, how vital it is now that they, over the next 3 days, go and get somebody, or not, in your own opinion.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital that they go and get someone. I don't believe that there isn't somebody in world football who's available, who wants to play for the champions, who is a better defender than Nat Phillips or a better defender than Reece Williams. That's not to throw either of those lads under the bus. They perform manfully, but they're not to the level of a team that is trying to finish in the top two, for instance. And you know, there must be someone out there. Liverpool will have been offered players during this transfer window. Liverpool will have been quoted fees for players during this transfer window, and I think they've just got to bite the bullet over the next couple of days and get someone in. It feels all a little bit sort of 8-9 years ago when John Henry was writing an open letter to fans about why they hadn't done something in the transfer window, and he talked then about Liverpool's status. Well, Liverpool's status from 8 years ago to now has changed. Liverpool are the champions. Liverpool have won the European Cup and the World Club Cup. They need to act like that. And I understand that there's a pandemic. I understand that, you know, money's tight, revenue's not what it was, and all the rest of it. But equally, I don't believe that going and getting one centre back, even two, would bankrupt the club in the current situation. There's got to be someone out there. So I'd like to see someone to come in, because it's an unprecedented situation in terms of the injuries at the back. And we are, you used the phrase paper in the cracks before. Well, we are paper in the cracks at the back. I don't want to see Henderson and Fabinho playing centre half for Liverpool. I want to see them in the middle, because that's where they can perform. Fabinho is one of the best in the world in his position, which is in midfield, not defence. And he's done well in defence, but equally he can be a little bit rash on the edge of the box. We saw that last week. So I want him back where he pulls the strings for Liverpool, where he can let Thiago go further forward. I don't want to see these makeshift solutions. So Liverpool have got to do business for me if they've got any ambition this season.
How deep is the frustration within the Liverpool fan groups at the moment regarding that inaction in terms of signing a central defender over the last few months?
Yeah, it's growing and it's growing, and look, you know, there's some extreme and some not so, as is always the case. You know, I don't think we should judge, you know, whole fan bases by one or two fans or anything like that. But you know, because I've seen other opposition fans talking about, oh, they want the board out and they want an ownership change. Well, collectively, I don't think we do. Everyone can see what FSG have done for Liverpool. They've won us the league, which we wanted for 3 decades, so they've got to take some credit for that. They got Jurgen Klopp, some credit for that too. But equally, they can be conservative at times, and they talk about risk a lot, and they talk about, not making short-term solutions. But this situation cries out for a short-term solution. That is exactly what the problem is. So could they do something on loan, maybe? I mean, I would have liked to have seen something at the other end of the transfer window as soon as it was open, because that would have said to me there was a plan in place. But it looked like they took a gamble. They went with the idea of Fabinho being almost a permanent centre half, and then the situation has got gradually worse. So admit your mistake and put it right now and go and get someone. And it might be someone that, it could be a name, it could be a player where we all groan a little bit and say, oh, not him. But equally, throwing in a lad who's 19 years old, who was playing for Kidderminster Harriers last season, doesn't make sense either. Or Nat Phillips, who was wanted by a string of championship clubs, including, I know Swansea were after him. That to me, no disrespect to the lad, is his level, not playing at the top end of the Premier League. So they are not solutions now, that and there is a problem. So go and rectify the situation. I think that's what most fans are now asking of the owners.
When you mentioned the extreme reactions there, are we talking sections of Liverpool supporters who are saying FSG have done their part now and it's time to move on? Is that how extreme we're talking?
There's always bits of that, isn't there? Especially when you if you use social media as a barometer of feeling, then you can find FSG out on there. There's people who've never liked them all the way through. There's people who think they're the best thing since sliced bread, and there's people in between. You will be able to find some fans who are saying that about FSG, no doubt about it. But what I would regard as more sensible fans, if you like, and not calling for massive change like that right now. We are, we've got to not look too entitled about this situation. We're currently 4th in the Premier League and reigning champions of the Premier League. There have been worse times than this to be a Liverpool fan. So I'm certainly not calling for that. I'm just hoping that a bit of sense prevails in that they go out and they rectify a big hole in Liverpool's squad right now.
What should be the medium-term ambition then, Gareth? If the short-term ambition is so clearly to go and sort out the centre-back position over the next couple of weeks, if possible, next couple of days really. But in the medium term, where should they be looking at in the summertime if this is a season where they don't manage to bring the Premier League back to Anfield, or if they don't manage to bring the Champions League back to Anfield?
I mean, it's just going again and staying there and being in the position to challenge. I think that's the thing, because in the past, Liverpool, when they were able to mount a title challenge, which obviously wasn't often enough in those 30 years, it was always boom, then bust. It was always challenge and then fall away. For me, if they're constantly in the top 3, the top 2, thereabouts, getting to the later stages of the Champions League, then that's where you should be and that's what your ambition should be. Of course, you always try to win those things, but I think there's an element of, it can depend on who you draw, it can depend on how well your opponents are doing. There's only so much you can control. Like Man City, we know will always have a bigger budget than Liverpool, can go out and do greater things in the transfer market. We've just got to cop for that and accept that. But equally, we've got to be there or thereabouts every season, ready to pounce. I think one of my worst seasons as a Liverpool fan in more recent times is when Leicester City won the league. Because I was looking at the table that year thinking, well, where are Liverpool? And why were we not ready to pounce on a season when lots of teams were not very good? And Leicester were in the situation to win it, and fair play to them, and they deserved it that season, not to do them down. But that's when Liverpool should have been ready to pounce. So that's where I want to see them. And I just think as well, talking about risks, talking about revenue, Liverpool could easily win the league for me this season. They could easily finish 5th. And if they finish 5th, well, how risky is that in terms of revenue, in terms of retention, in terms of recruitment, in terms of your status? So that to me is surely a bigger risk than going out and buying a centre-half or 2 right now. So that would be what I would be saying to the owners if they ever listen to me, which I'm sure they don't.
Yeah, even on that, like Trent Alexander-Arnold saying after the game last night that nothing had actually changed that much, that I wasn't sure whether that was to be taken in the positive sense or not. But anyway, look, we'll see. You mentioned the fixture list that's upcoming, so there's be plenty of a chance to chat about that over the coming weeks. We wanted to mention to you as well and talk to you a little bit about when we had John last week, Gareth, and you took a lot of abuse for saying that the absence of fans was negatively impacting in Liverpool's performance. And the response from, I'd say, a somewhat sizable, seeing the traffic that was coming through, a sizable cohort of United fans was swift. It was abusive on a very personal level and to the people of Liverpool, and it was absolutely brutal. Were you surprised by it?
I was surprised by, why the comment caused such a stir, really. I mean, I've seen Gary Neville say something very similar in the last couple of days, and he doesn't seem to have been on the end of it. It does seem to me that there is a section of supporters on both sides, Liverpool and Manchester United, who take that rivalry too far. For me, there's plenty you can talk about and plenty of stick you can throw each other's way in a sporting sense, without having to go down the road of talking about digs around homelessness, digs around football disasters, and I include Munich in that because I know it goes back the other way from Liverpool fans to Man United fans. For me, Munich, Heysel, Hillsborough, all of those things are off the table. The football isn't a place where we should be talking about death and tragedies. And I think it's worth remembering that there are people who are still affected by all of those tragedies on a daily basis, families, etc., friends, etc. And would you go up to a family or a friend of any of those families who've been affected in the street and say something like you would say to them online, some of the stuff that was sent my way? No, you wouldn't. So why say it online? And like I say, there are extremes on both sides. It's seen as a little bit, bravado, manly. I don't know what it is to say, oh, I hate Scousers, or oh, I hate Manx. And look, in a sporting sense, I don't like Man United. I want Liverpool to do better than them every single season, and that will remain the case until I pass away. But the rest of it is too far, and I think some people need to be respectful of where the line is there. And yet, I come on a show and talk about Liverpool and talk about Man United and talk about the league table and the influence of fans, and I don't really expect to be having a conversation about Heysel 5 minutes after, or Hillsborough 5 minutes after. I think some people need to look in the mirror there, really. And as I say, it's including Liverpool fans. I'm not just throwing this at Man United fans. I know that there is a section of Liverpool fans that go too far on it. There's a rivalry, and then there's just taking things far too far, and that's what happened, I think, with the reaction to that. There was a bit of a pile-on.
Can we talk to you a little bit about that aspect of it? Because I think that there was a pile-on and it was a social media storm last week, but it is a narrative that exists far away from that as well, as you've written brilliantly about on the Anfield Wrap over the years. When we talk about that sizable cohort, in your experience, very much been of the fans, Gareth, and amongst the fans, and what's your sense of how much of a vocal minority it is? And also the point about that you make there about these are people who live cheek by jowl in the general run of things without having to engage in that level of abuse. Your sense of why it goes over the top when it comes to football.
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously, as is detailed every single time we play them, a big rivalry between the two cities. We do want to outdo each other, and that is in terms of everything, not just football. It's music, it's fashion, it's everything else. But I'm one who's sort of crossed the divide, if you like, in that I worked for a decade in Manchester, so I've got a lot of friends in Manchester, friends who are Mancunians. I know the city well, and I find it all so reductive because there have been times on both sides where one city has helped out the other, and there are little bits and bobs that people don't seem to talk about enough. And I'm not talking about Matt Busby being a former Liverpool player here, and I'm not talking about Bill Shankly, helping out Man United in situations or anything like that, going back absolutely years. I'm going back, more recent times. So, people, what I think is wrong is where the focus is sometimes. So, even now we're talking about this. Well, how many people have done this in the grand scheme of things in terms of the millions that support, Manchester United and Liverpool? It's a small number, but we talk about the small number because it's extreme behaviour. I know for a fact that, when Manchester United have come to Liverpool at times, there have been wreaths laid on the Hillsborough disaster memorial and things like that, but that doesn't get talked about because that doesn't fit this particular narrative. Equally, Kerry Dalglish always talks about Sir Alex Ferguson being one of the first people to ring them up after Hillsborough and things like that. The two clubs have been respectful to each other on a level, and then also disrespectful to each other on a level. And how much is it prevalent? Well, look, it is prevalent, and it gets passed down from generation to generation. This has been the case throughout my life, 40 odd years of watching footy, that there has been this rivalry there and there's been this edge there. And once upon a time it was going far too far, and people were throwing golf balls at each other with nails in them. I think we've come away from that now, thankfully. But now what we've got is the internet generation where, like I say, it just seems a go-to to just start dropping in phrases about Hillsborough High School. You know, there's this thing, not just Manchester United, other sets of fans seem to do it. Oh, the Scousers bin dippers. Like, homelessness is not funny. Poverty is not funny. And how can you be dropping that phrase into conversation day by day or week by week and at the same time applauding what Marcus Rashford's doing for child poverty? I don't quite see how you can balance it in your own mind, but then you just get this awful thing of it's just banter. Well, banter needs to do one then. Let's jib banter from football because it's awful. If that's banter, I don't want any part of it, because you know there's a huge homelessness problem in Manchester, as anyone with any sense from the city would tell you, and a huge problem with child poverty. The same in Liverpool, with two northern cities, two cities that have suffered a lot of the same problems. And sport is our getaway for a lot of people growing up in those areas. And perhaps that's partly why it is. It's sort of, you know, you follow your team with such a passion that it spills over at times. But I still think we can talk about it, and we can talk about having a bit more sense around it. And we can talk about where that line is a bit more, because it doesn't get talked about enough. That, and instead it's easier to just go down the road of, well, they said this and they did this, so that justifies why I'm doing this now. Well, now just put an end to it. Just be normal, be human. Treat the pandemic as a moment to press the reset button and behave in a better way.
Why do you think football is used as a conduit for hate, or why is it such an effective conduit for hate? That we see this in football stadiums quite often. We see this very often, as you've experienced on social media, when it comes to some sort of divisive argument that has nothing to do with the levels of hate that we're actually seeing. Why do we see so much of it in football?
I think it's almost seen as otherworldly at times, isn't it? Where the rest of society's rules don't apply, you know. So I can see that to an extent, in that it is an escape. It's an escape for me as well, and it's one of the reasons why I really miss going to the ground and miss football without fans. Because yeah, it's great watching it on the television, but I'm not having a pint with my mates, and I'm not enjoying all the routines around going to Liverpool week in, week out. And everyone's missing that right now. But there is a thing. I think there's the rivalry stuff. There's the sort of the group behaviour stuff. There's the I'm representing my city or my football club, and that they're an opposite tribe, and so therefore, you know, we can throw some stick their way and vice versa. I quite like some of that, but again, it's knowing where the line is. There's plenty of stick you can give, which is fairly gentle, which isn't going over the line, which isn't referencing people dying. And it's fine. It's, you know, it's ultimately good natured. It can be sticker. I don't know, whatever you want it to be about clothes, about haircuts, about, you know, sport and ambition or lack of, whatever it may be. But there is a minority who follow football, who let us down all the time and make it, you know, look a worse place than it actually is. I mean, you know, I still think some of the way that police treat football fans is awful. But the police will point to the behaviour of the minority and say, well, that's why we're doing it. So that's why, you know, this needs to tighten up. It needs challenging. It needs talking about more. But like I said before, I think the big takeaway for me to remember all the way through all of this is that it's a minority, and that, you know, on both sides, there are brilliant supporters of both clubs who know where the line is. And like I say, I know plenty of Mancunians. I've had plenty of pints with Mancunians. I've been to the city a lot, and I know plenty of Mancunians that come the other way as well. So this idea that there's some kind of, you know, false border up and we're lighting fires either side, it's not quite like that. I just think some people get carried away when the two teams meet.
Have you seen Munich air disaster chants much in Anfield, and have you ever seen it challenged by Liverpool's fans?
Certainly, like, it's certainly lessened all that kind of stuff now. I think obviously, you know, there's disasters that Liverpool have suffered. I think once upon a time, I mean, look, I grew up in Huyton in Liverpool, and I can remember a huge daub of graffiti in Huyton that said Munich 58 on one of the tougher estates, shall we say, in Huyton for all the time that I was growing up. And that was just there. You know, you would see it scraped into desks at school and things like that. And you know, when you look back now as an adult, well, that's awful. Well, you know, why were we referencing something like that? Why were we ever singing about stuff like that? But equally, surely there are Man United fans who wonder why there are songs about the sun, or there are references to Heysel and Hillsborough in songs that they sing. And, have I seen it recently on the Cop? I can't say. I've seen it away when we've been to Old Trafford. I've been on the divide between the two sets of fans and seeing it on both sides. I've seen, people mimicking being crushed, obviously as a reference to Hillsborough, and I've seen people pretending to fly planes, whatever you want to call that Munich gesture the other way, both of which are hugely distasteful and unnecessary and just not somewhere we need to go. And, I understand that, people get pumped up, that the adrenaline takes them somewhere that they don't really want to be at times. But I just think that should be off the table. And there are people you can follow, certainly people I follow on social media whose family were at Hillsborough, and every time any of this happens, they're on there saying, well, this is a reminder yet again. This is a reminder I didn't need. They still want the outlet of football. They still want to support, a lot of them still want to support Liverpool, still want to have Liverpool as part of their lives. They don't want to be reminded about a disaster in 1989 every time Liverpool and Manchester United meet. Equally, I'm sure there are families who lost people at Munich who would say the same. And then Heysel, Heisel's the worst one, almost the worst one of the lot, because it's always, well, it was your fault. It was your fault. You never talk about it. Well, I had that levelled at me last week. This is the disaster that Liverpool fans never talk about. Well, if anyone wants to use Google and the fingers and Anfield Rap and Heysel, they will find that we talked about it at length. They will find about it that we did a series of articles on the 30th anniversary, a special podcast. We unearthed a load of documents, statements from witnesses at the time, and we wrote about it really honestly, and we spoke to people in Italy, and we spoke to people who were there, and we also referenced the fact that people went to jail for it. And what more do people want? Or is it just banter? It's just banter that you want. Well, it's not banter. So yeah, it's not great, is it? It's awful. It's a bad side of football. But again, I would re-emphasise over and over again, it's the minority, and it's the minority that need to change, and the rest of us can crack on with supporting two great football clubs.
Can I just ask you very briefly, Gareth, at the end, because you mentioned just there about it being off the table, and it feels like the rivalry now, as the two of them are potentially fighting over or certainly in the title race at this stage, seems to have almost given more voice to it. And like the younger generations that are coming into it might be worse than that learned aspect of it, maybe worse than the origins of it almost. Where do you see it all going? Like it's not going anywhere anytime soon by the looks of it.
Well, and this is where I just think anyone who has got a bit of influence, I mean, it was mentioned there, have you seen it challenged? I mean, I have seen it. I have seen the behaviour challenged amongst Liverpool fans, and that should continue, and that should happen among Man United fans surely as well, because the way things work around match culture is that things get passed down. That's how songs happen. That's how songs remain. Liverpool still sing a song where we're talking about hating Nottingham Forest. We haven't played them for years and years and years. And there'll be young fans going to Anfield in normal times going, well, why are you singing about Nottingham Forest? Then you explain why you're singing about Nottingham Forest and about the European Cup and about the fact that they were a rival for a time. And then it makes sense to them. And then they sing it and they know why. So, equally, these terms and these songs, the older generation of fans that maybe hear a younger fan using it or see them using it online, what's to stop them explaining to them why it's wrong? And, I've written lots of stuff about this and about where the line is and what we should be doing. And, that's me trying to do my bit. But I think there are more people who could do their bit. And there are people who turn a blind eye. There are maybe people who maybe have a little bit of a smirk at it and don't get involved. Well, do get involved. Do get involved and challenge it. Do get involved and try and change it. Because you say it's not going away. Well, the rivalry's not going away. No, because Manchester United and Liverpool will likely always be two of the clubs going for the trophies for the rest of our lives. And in a way, long may that continue, because I like there to be a bit of beef, a bit of edge. But it's, again, knowing where the line is. And surely everyone can say to younger fans, well, you know what? Football disasters is off the table. You know what? Chants about homelessness or dipping bins is off the table. Because it's ridiculous. It's not based in fact. Anyone who's going to football matches on a regular basis is paying 40 and 50 quid a week. So they're not dipping into bins. So it's just daft. And the idea that, someone no doubt will come back to me today and say, wow, it winds you up, doesn't it? Well, just get away from that. Why does that matter? Why do you want to wind up a stranger on the basis of homelessness or poverty? You know, wind me up about the fact that, you know, we might not retain our title. Sound. Wind me up about the fact that, you know, our owners aren't putting their hands in the pocket to buy a centre half right now. Sound. Wind me up about, you know, who brought fashion back to England first from Europe. All those daft arguments that go on between Liverpool and Man United fans. I enjoy all that. That's football culture. That's proper football culture. But disasters, no thanks, not for me. You know, this sort of tragedy tennis that takes place at games between Liverpool and Man United should be dead. Leave it alone, move on. Like I say, the pandemic's a time when I think we can all be thinking about how we behave in every aspect of our lives. And I'd love to think there's quite a few things about football that various people across the game can go, is that right? And maybe we should leave that now. And maybe next time we do something different, we do something cleverer. You know, all the stuff about, you know, Liverpool fans saying to Man United, come back when you've won 18. And then Man United fans coming back with a flag that says, well, you know, we're back or whatever it is and things like that. That's all fine and that's all good and that's clever. And the banners and stuff like that between the two sides, by and large, have been good ones. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. Let's have more of that. Let's have more. Let's just be a bit classier around football, surely. Yeah.
Well, look, you've articulated that brilliantly, Gareth. We'll link to a couple of your pieces as well. I had a read of them over the last 24 hours. Some really great stuff in the Anfield Wrap. Thanks a million as always.
Cheers. Thanks, boys.
Gareth Roberts there on the line. A couple of comments coming in as well. Brandon saying, sad that rivals have that tribal mentality after 90 minutes, time to live your lives. And T-Mac G saying that Gareth Roberts speaks a lot of sense. Nastiness is often justified just as banter, but there's a line of decency that should be respected by all fans. And so say all of us. It's 8:15 on this Friday morning. Plenty to come over the course of the show. We're going to have a packed show still to come for you right here on OTB AM. There's the crappy quiz, Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan, Rugby with Alan Quinlan, and we're back with Liam Moggan, who's the coach's coach, joining us for the very latest of our OTB Future of Sports series after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
There he goes, 1-2. Opens up, back for Sadio Mane, and it was coming. Mane scores for Liverpool. What a wonderfully worked team goal.
Jurgen Klopp's champions will hope to rediscover some form on the road in the Premier League this Sunday. Liverpool travel to West Ham for a 4:30 kick-off, and we'll have full live match commentary on Off the Ball with Vinnie Perth alongside Stephen Doyle. Before that, it's Brian Kerr and Nathan Murphy on duty as Leicester welcome Leeds to the King Power. We'll have the paper review as usual too, all to look forward to on this Sunday's Off the Ball, live from 1 until 7.
Off the Ball, don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scholesy were out every night, probably night before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right, it's 18 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning. It's a wet Friday morning where we are, and hopefully wherever it is that you are, you're nice and dry and enjoying the show this morning. Do keep your comments coming into us. Plenty of reaction to that Liverpool game as well last night. You mentioned JP telling you in the ad break there that you must go and download the OTB Sports app. Well, we'll endorse that message as well as telling you what's on the website this morning on otbsports.com. Lots of stuff up there, including the breaking news coming from Celtic this morning that the Celtic chief exec Peter Lowell is to retire here in the summer. There's more details on that up there just in the last couple of moments. Declan Rice, the best all-round midfielder in the Premier League, according to John Giles, who was talking to Nathan last night. More as well from the Spurs Liverpool game last night, the Matip injury, and plenty more as well, and those contract extensions at Ulster. So plenty up there, otbsports.com. Get yourself along and check all of that out. Right, we are shifting gears slightly. We've been running a series of conversations across OTB this week and over the coming weeks indeed about the future of sport in Ireland. We have some great speakers on during the week in topics like player development, participation and dropout rates, resources in underprivileged areas, and much more as well besides. But our next stop relates to coaching and coaching the coaches specifically. And joining us is someone who's been involved in successful dressing rooms at all levels and in all types of Irish sport. Liam Moggan, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
Great, thanks, and thanks a million for taking the time this morning to jump on the line and continue the series of chats that we're having. We really wanted to speak to you about that element of sort of coaching the coaches and the passion, which I know that you're very strong on. And it struck me that we'd Diarmuid Ling on as one of the first voices on the series this week, and he spoke about the importance of connection with your sport. Among your areas, obviously, is coaching the coaches. What's your take on where we sit in this country compared to other countries in terms of the quality of our coaching generally?
Okay, we've got great iconic coaches, you know, going right back to time when the Irish Whales, the throwers, dominated the world through the field of athletics and through Gaelic football. So our history stands up to any. What distinguishes right now is the huge number of volunteers we have in proportion to the number of volunteers in other countries. Volunteers are the backbone of our sport. Generally people who are giving of their free time in the best way they possibly can with the best intentions. And when NCTC, where I started working in 1998, it had been set up in 92, there was a legendary director there, and he did a study of really putting Ireland in its place in the world. And two things stood out from Ireland from a coaching point of view. One was the presence of our own Indigenous games and the great influence that the GAA had. And the second one was that our dependency on so many volunteers.
So on that point, and you mentioned the phrase there, best intentions, Liam, which sometimes can come as a bit of a backhanded compliment, right? So where are we at then in terms of the support of those volunteer coaches? Because effectively what we're talking about is a suite of parents who are out and about trying to do the best for their kids, not always brilliantly equipped to do it though.
That's right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's the phrase that came to me there when you mentioned it. Coaching is a skill. And I think that's one of the basic fundamental steps, the first steps that is missed in the support of coaches and in the ongoing training of coaches. Is sitting beside a piano and they've once seen a piano and heard somebody play a piano. We don't assume that they can go over and sit down and play that piano. But we do that in coaching fields and gyms and halls all over. Look, would you go over there and coach those young kids? And of course, when someone finds themselves in that position, many times, they're like any beginner, they're stuck. But unlike many beginners, they're stuck in a live context. There's pairs of eyes looking back at them. What do we do next? You know, give us advice, give us praise. So coaching is a skill. And when you mentioned Diarmuid Ling, you mentioned about a connection to their sport. We definitely need a connection to the sport, but I would say that's the third connection that's needed. One, the volunteer or professional if they are, they need a connection to core coaching skills. Two, they need to be able to connect to the player. Players don't need coaches. All they need is a ball. So they need to be able to engage that person. And thirdly, they need to connect to the game. We coach people who play football. We coach people who run, jump, throw, play golf. So the error in the support or the error in the understanding often is that we coach the game. We don't. It's the third phase in the way I would say we coach a player. And then we need coaching skills in order to do that. So maybe a bit of a rant, maybe a bit of a high horse from my position, but that's the way I see it.
And you're entitled to it. We might come back to that in just a little bit, but so that idea then of the support, who is it that does it best in this country? Is there like an association or a union or whatever it is that jumps out at you as the best, best practice in terms of what others might be able to pick from?
Okay, well, best, I'll leave a judgment best out of it. But again, if I get back to the whole concept of the formal support of coaches that set up in the early 90s, there was an understanding that the best people to support coaches were the people from the national governing bodies. So again, in the work that NCTC or Coaching Ireland or Sports Coach Ireland as it's called now, it wasn't that they were to train the coaches. They would invite the governing bodies to nominate people from their governing bodies who would best go back into the governing body. And the only course then was given to those. So we trained coach educators. And whether it's best or not, it's fluid. The whole role of a coach is to implement or to influence change, positive change, improve performance, change in behavior. So the ultimate outcome of any successful coaching is change. It's fluid. It's one after the other. So what may be the best system today may not be the best system next week or next year. It's really that a good support system is in place and the efforts of the people are in the right place to do that. And in the main, most governing bodies are now and have for a while acknowledged that coaches are the bedrock of increased numbers of participation and ultimately then leading on to what we would call performances that would be matched at senior international level.
What are the raw ingredients necessary to become a great coach?
A statement that Woody Allen made, I don't always agree with, but there's a certain amount in it. He said success is 99% turning up. There are raw skills, as you mentioned there, Eoin. I would say that those raw skills are around planning, observation, analysis, asking questions, stepping in, stepping out, staying silent, adapting activities, progressing, giving feedback, motivating. So you can see there's a huge amount into it. And some of those skills are personal traits that people may have learned as being a member of a family or a community, or may not have learned as being a member of a family or part of a community. And that's why it's so essential that those skills, raw skills as you call them, one, they're broken down. And then just like weaving a blanket, each of these skills are trained in their own way. So when they're seamlessly performed by the coach, they don't seem like they're doing much. And these raw skills are best fueled through the personality of the person. We lost some great coaches recently in Eamon Ryan, the coach of the Cork ladies Gaelic football team and some men's teams, and Jerry Kieran in athletics. They had the raw skills. However, as personalities and as individuals, they were very, very different. And in their application of these raw skills, that they were very different. The key thing is that they had them. They knew how to introduce, to demonstrate, to explain, to adapt, to make the complex simple.
Can you explain that a little bit, Liam? It's interesting that you brought up those two examples. It definitely does feel on the outside looking in that they approached coaching in two very different ways. What's your opinion on that? And was it as different as it seemed?
I think it was. I was lucky to know both of them from a periphery. Both were present. Both had a passion. Both had great knowledge of their sport. And yet that was banked. And very few of the comments made about them since their passing recently was about how knowledgeable they were in their sport. They spoke about a passion they had for their sport. It was spoken about the connection they had with each and everybody. And I suppose if you're to have that connection with somebody, you give of your time to find out, well, what's the best next step to that person. Sport and coaching is never about you. It's not all about you, Dad, Roisin, my daughter said to me once and survived. But it was very, very significant because it isn't about you. It isn't about the sport. It is always about the person who's in front of you. So your ability to give them time to connect with them and to be able to analyze and decide what is the best next step for them is always it's always the challenge. Coaching the sport is is a flawed way about it, but it misses out on the dynamic of this complex, unpredictable, wonderful, flawed, confusing, frustrating person that's in front of you. But that's your work. It's with them. The ultimate, the best coach of every coach is the player. And of course, the person who's responsible for the performance is the player. So it fits in with the coach's role of stepping back. My job here is just to assist. It's to support. It's to encourage and get off the stage then when they're performing.
For Jerry Kiernan to have finished in the top 10 in an Olympics marathon would have required him to think all about himself. Is that a challenge that you've seen over your years of experience, where people who have succeeded as sports people have struggled as coaches because they need to go from being like having the level of selfishness that is required to succeed, and then going to a level of selflessness that is required within coaching?
Yeah, great performers of any kind, Eoin, are self-centered. They think of themselves first. They're not selfish. Selfish is thinking of yourself only. But as you, let's say in my own case, from coaching athletics, from being able to run with the athletes I was helping, being able to feel the pace of the run and the duration of the interval, that was a relatively easy coaching role. The real essence of the coaching role happened when I was no longer able to run with them. And now I had to really fulfill the role as people would see it, observing, analysing, trial and error, getting feedback from those. Both people I mentioned were very high performers in the sports they came from, Gaelic football and athletics. It's a separate role to coaching, and very few actually make that jump. Not all great performers become great coaches. Some extraordinarily gifted coaches were never great performers. So it's whether or not they perform or not is irrelevant. It's whether they take on that specific role of a coach, someone who's there to serve, is there to help somebody else.
Liam, I'm conscious of and I'm conscious of putting you on the spot with this next question, but that we would have a bunch of people who are watching us this morning or over the weekend who themselves will be some of those well-intentioned parents or whatever it might be on the sidelines. What are there 3 things that you see happening regularly, or 3 things that you might be able to recommend as work-ons or ideas or advice, maybe best way of putting it, for volunteer coaches?
Okay, well, I applaud all volunteer coaches, first of all. I think that they're wonderful, the fact that they've actually committed to be there. But the first thing I'd say would be slightly negative. We make the assumption that all players want to be coached. It's an assumption that as soon as they arrive in the club, it's nearly like we provide a hurdle to stop them being active. You got to wait till the coach is here. You got to wait till the coach sets up a structure. So the first thing I would say is don't get in their way of letting them play. Let them play. 2, deal with the individual. The knowledge or lack of knowledge you may have in the sport can both get in your way. You may know too much, you may know too little, but it's the person that's there in front of you. So don't assume they need coaching. 2, concentrate on the person. And 3, I would say, encourage yourself and support yourself by seeking assistance. Go and ask other coaches, parents to have a look. Ask the young kids, what did you like today? What would you like to start with the next day? Now you're beginning to engage on a kind of review of yourself. And 40, if I can put in, keep your passion. Why did you want to coach in the first place? That passion can be dampened. It can be dampened by comments. It can be dampened by what you see in front of you. It can be dampened by results. Serve that passion. Why do you want to do it? Get back to that on a regular basis.
You can go to 10 if you want, Liam. There's no limit on it. do you find that is it the exception or the rule that people want to be, I've had a kid and I'm going to become the next Jose Mourinho out of this, or that is that the exception or the rule that people sort of really fancy themselves as being a coach and try to insert themselves? Because I was interested to hear the first thing you say was get out of the way.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges facing coaching, Eoin, is that if we look for best practice in all things, you would look to the best presenters, you'd look for the picture the demonstration, the video of the best. And a lot of the demonstrations we get of coaching is not good practice. It's visually very attractive to see the coach shout, roar, throw their head, walk up and down sidelines, intrude onto the pitch. It's great visuals, but it isn't good coaching practice. So one of the great difficulties of someone accepting, how can I become the next great coach, is really accepting what is great coaching. It's to be calm. It's to be still, encouraging, smiling, watching. It isn't good visuals. Now, that takes someone that needs to be very confident in their own skin in order to do that. And sadly, not enough coaches embrace the role they have in encouraging other coaches. A lot of practice that we see is not best practice, and even say it's not effective coaching, because any player that's on the pitch of any age that needs a person ranting and raving and shouting and roaring on the sideline, well, the job hasn't been done in training, so you need to get that back off. So I'd say anyone who is ambitious is find out what are the skills of good coaches and be happy in your own skin, that through your own personality, you're going down that road.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody watching and listening this morning has done the same thing that I've done, and there's been a rush of names that have come into my head since you've started to describe that ranter and raver on the touchline. It might be better served not to get into too much of that. Can I ask you just finally, the last one for me, Eoin might want to come in afterwards, but the last one for me, just because it was a conversation that we've been having over the last while about early specialisation, and I remember in the middle of last year the FAI making recommendations via Rude Doctor about specialising in soccer from the age of 12 at the expense of everything else. We had Stuart Lancaster on last night, who was very much a proponent of the opposite, and he's come through perhaps a similar-ish route to yourself with a PE background and through to the academy, international level and elite club obviously as well. But the value of all sports for kids of that sort of 10, 12 and upwards, from your experience, Liam, what's your best advice on that?
But let's look at it this way, Eoin. All athletes are going to slow down eventually, no matter whether they're Olympic performers, whether they're your average club, recreational. As they age, they're going to get slower. They're not going to be able to perform to that level. So let's say that we have that window of performance in a performance-related, not just a health basis. So now we have got that window. Really, sport in the role of the development of that person is just to make them a better person. It isn't to only make them a better player. So I would say that the wider the experience people get for the greatest duration of time should be the focus of any coach. Now, there are some sports, swimming and gymnastics would stand out, where they are early specialization is required. But in many, many other sports, we have many, many examples of people who had a wide experience of a wide variety of sporting activities before they then specialized. So just like in our development of any youngster, we don't specialize in just giving them a certain amount of food or watching one TV program or doing one particular thing. We broaden that out. So I would prefer to see the role that there's a certain window in a person's life where coaches can have an influence towards improved performance. Let's maximize that in a holistic way so that when that period is over, they're the best kind of person we'd like to be living beside, living with, in the community, back into our sport. I think that gives us a bigger role of the vocational role that coaches play.
Who's the best coach in Ireland?
Oh, well. Many of our best coaches are not in Ireland, Eoin. Many of our best coaches, for whatever reason, are not here. And I think really you've touched a nerve there. Why are some of our best coaches not in Ireland? And I think that gets down to a number of reasons. But from what I would see within a system is that the best coaches have a massive passion for what it is they do. And people with passion can get in the way of slick systems. They're awkward. They're thinking about it all the time. They all the time want improvements. They're asking questions. So there's no, I would say, and I would give due credit, anyone who's down in the field, who's in the gym, who's beside the pool, anyone who's encouraging someone else to take part in sport, I'd say we don't have to put bad or good or whatever. And look, let me add it another way, Eoin. If you're to ask me, have I seen many bad coaches? I'd say no, I haven't. I could see coaches that you could see areas of improvement in. But have I seen a coach and say, wow, they are really, really poor? No, I haven't. So just like when we start a piece on the piano, we may not be good at it. The notes of that piece are not going to change, but over time, our execution of it will get better. So I would say, look, be the best you can be today and keep on working at that, and you'll become better. So that's the way I'd phrase that, rather than who's the best. And also it'll allow me to keep more friends within coaching.
Liam, I feel this is maybe just the start of something rather than the end of it. So I really enjoyed that chat over the last 20 minutes or so. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. Take care. Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Liam Moggan there, the coach's coach. On the line to continue our series of conversations around OTB Future, and you can check out that hashtag if you want to check out more of those conversations. As I mentioned during the chat, Stuart Lancaster was on with Nathan last night to get stuck into all of that, and plenty of suggestions coming in about from people as to who they feel their best coach was, including Michael on YouTube. Mickey Whelan by a mile, he says, and I'm sure there's plenty of Dubs that would agree with that too. We are watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's 8:50 on this Friday morning, and do keep your comments coming into us. We've plenty more to come. Alan Quinlan is going to join us in just a little bit to discuss all the rugby, so stay tuned for all of that. But it is Friday morning, and we are not the home of hot takes. I mean, if we took nothing else from last week's show, that really should be the lesson. These takes that we're about to bring your way, colder than Gareth Bale's arse on a cold, wet night in London. It's time for this week's Cold Cuts.
I am flabbergasted. Maguire. And they're here. Shocking. I'm disgusted. Maguire. And they're here. Get close to people. Move your feet. Move your feet. Maguire. And they're here. I am flabbergasted. I'm not too happy with all that, no. Maguire. I would be swinging punches at that guy. They're here. Swinging punches, swinging punches, swinging punches, swinging punches. Maguire. And they're here. I'm fuming here watching this game of football.
The biggest concern for you, dear viewer, is that this item now has a sting, and that means it is here to stay. These are the things that have caught our attention during the week. They're definitely not hot takes. Sometimes they're not even cold takes. They're just stuff that titillated us from the internet and beyond over the course of the last 7 days. So we're going to go straight in with number 3 this week, which is with the Super Bowl obviously in sight. We went stateside to kick off the week with a snippet of the new Detroit Lions coach, Dan Campbell. I think Thomas Tuchel meets a cross between Francie Bellew and Vinnie Jones. Take a listen.
This team is going to take on the identity of this city, all right? And this city's been down, and it found a way to get up, all right? It's found a way to overcome adversity, all right? And so this team's going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth, all right? And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. All right, and on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing. All right, that's going to be the mentality.
Just after that, Dan walked around the back of that backdrop and punched himself in the kneecap. He was so annoyed about having him let himself go.
Yeah. Encouraging cannibalism is the level we've got to in US coaching. Sign Army Hammer up to be a running back for the Detroit Lions is my first piece of advice for him.
In at number 2, you've guessed it, Richard Keys. He was number 1 last week, and alongside his trusty sidekick Andy Gray, they've been not so privately advising Pep Guardiola. Keys and Gray, they make the cut again this week. In fact, we heard Cold Cuts predict that, like Tupac and Biggie, they're going to still be in the charts long after they're gone. Take a listen.
I don't know why Pep can't get his head around. Maybe he's just a coach who loves to coach positive football. Maybe he has another coach who does the back 4. Well, his coach must be
he's got 60 people around him.
Well, there you go. So I would be surprised if
you'd have thought
works
somebody would...
an awful lot with the back 4 defensively. I would be surprised. I don't know. Somebody might tell me.
He could go and watch Roy Hodgson work, or he could bring Sam Allardyce in on a temporary basis. I mean, any of these guys have shaped teams defensively, haven't they?
It's the casual nature of it all. It's just dropped in so casually, you blink, you might miss it.
This is a cold take that has been brought out of cold storage this week, said last October on BN Sports, and naturally you get smashed by the team you're supposed to be helping as a defensive coach, and it resurfaced. So thank you to literally everybody on Twitter for bringing that to our attention this week.
In at number one, it's a joint award this week, and it goes to Frank Lampard and Thomas Tuchel, the two men who were dragged on into a proverbial, hypothetical, philosophical schoolyard dust-up by the baying mob, which shouts of, no, my dad is stronger than your dad, and yeah, well, my dad can speak German and he'll get much more out of Werner and Hertz and Havertz than your dad. But speaking of family ties, Frank's uncle Harry was the first man up.
You're only as good as your players at the end of the day, and the players that have brought in, the two German players, have been massive disappointments.
Yeah.
Massive. I mean, you look at them, I'm not even sure, especially the centre forward, whether he's cut out for English football. It looks to me like the physical side of it's too much for him. I don't know. Who's brought them in? As it suddenly, yeah, we've spent 200 million. They are Frank. There you are. Get on with it. You know, that is football management now, I'm afraid. They're given... The players are given to you. If he was worried about his lack of experience, maybe they should have brought somebody in and said to Frank, look, Frank, I think you need to get somebody in with a bit more experience around you, somebody you can talk to.
Yeah, if only Frank Owen had somebody at hand who was a semi-retired, hugely experienced, charismatic, not wheeler-dealer relative who could have been part of a world-class management team.
A king of the jungle in your family, and you neglect to use him. Disgraceful betrayal from Frank Lampard is all I'm saying.
Next up in this schoolyard dust-up was a man who played 58 times for England, one of the most respected England players of his generation, and he also coached with England for a while. Yes, it's Darren Gough, and the cricket ace isn't convinced by football's hot thing.
I'm not 100% convinced. I think it's very difficult. He's obviously can manage. I'm not saying he's a poor manager whatsoever. You all have to look at what he did with Dortmund. He's gone to Paris, a big club. He deserved that opportunity where he won a couple of league titles. But this is a different league.
Different league. Not even on Fleet Street was having the Germans' appointment this week. Not sure what was more impressive here, the Tuchel ticking clock or Gers Henry Winter impression.
When the ball flew out of play near Thomas Tuchel midway through the first half, Chelsea's latest head coach quickly seized a spare, throwing it to Ben Chilwell, trying to quicken the pace, maybe fearing that the clock is already ticking at Stamford Bridge. It usually is.
If you were listening to OTB AM yesterday on a speaker on some recess of your living room or whatever, and you walked into the room, you would have stopped dead in your tracks and be like, is that Henry Winter on my radio? It was just such an absolute dead-on impression. Incredible work, really. Mario Rosenstock, watch out, is the first thing that came to my mind.
And finally, one that we really couldn't leave out. This didn't make the top three, but we couldn't leave it out. It's not strictly sport, but we had to mention it. No script embellishment needed with this one whatsoever. Mark McSharry, TD, who was so gung-ho for the vaccine this week, he suggested at the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party that if the Ku Klux Klan is selling a vaccine, we should buy it. Now, listen, there's been a somewhat justified, you would say, pile on poor Mark, and he's been out to explain himself. His apology went something along the lines of this: as someone who conversationally uses extreme analogies at times, those who know me know precisely where I'm coming from. Whatever could he mean?
I haven't seen you on the record for the previous decade when this was an issue. I haven't seen you address this point, and whether or not the current people were involved, they come from the same processes that elected the board for the last decade and a half, that allowed the previous existence, the previous administration, to walk the organisation into the debt it has at the moment.
Well, to carry that analogy through, it's like saying that the people that elected the government that made mistakes shouldn't be allowed to vote again. That just doesn't stand up, Chair.
My point here is that...
I would echo Ger's long, awkward pause, silence, and weird look. He's not good at analogies, on it turns out.
No, he certainly isn't. We just want to bring one last thing to your attention this week. People who were watching us on Periscope or on Facebook last week will have noticed that Adrian Barry woke up on Friday morning and decided, you know what, my voice isn't deep enough. And like a prepubescent boy, decided, I'm going to drop my voice down a few octaves lower. This is the result.
Friday morning, welcome along to OTB AM. It's gone 7:30 and it's freezing cold on this January morning. But Eoin Sheahan, good morning to you. I'm delighted to say we've a title race to warm the cockles of our hearts.
You certainly do. It's going to be a very interesting few months.
Yeah, that could look like an incredible cold take on in about sort of 4 or 6 weeks. We'll see what happens. I was amused with Graham Souness last night in commentary talking about Divock Origi's chance.
Yeah. I mean, your professionalism on knows no bounds. I had no idea what was going on there. You did, but you carried on regardless.
I, for one, welcome our new Megazord Overlord, who sounds like a villain in Power Rangers. It suits you.
That is your Friday's Cold Cuts.
Maguire. And De Gea. Shocking. I'm disgusted. Maguire. And De Gea. Get close to people. Move your feet. Move your feet. Maguire. And De Gea. I am flabbergasted. I'm not too happy with all that. No. Maguire. I would be swinging punches at that guy. De Gea. Swinging punch, swinging punch, swinging punch, swinging punch. Maguire. And De Gea. I'm fuming here watching this game of football.
The difficulty for that slot is always going to be that it's going to be outshone by that brilliant sting, the work of Joseph Conroy. But that is this week's Cold Cuts. By the way, you can tune into OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. Lots of good stuff coming your way. If you don't have the app, just head along to the App Store and download that, and you can pick it up there, or head along to otbsports.com for live streaming as well. But from 1 o'clock, it'll be Ogie Moore in conversation with Off the Ball. It's OTB Gold coming your way there. 1:30, the Paddy Power half hour with Jura Enda and co. Marking your card for the weekend's football, and plenty of interesting stuff there too. Live Friday night racing will be Danny Mullins in the company of Ger and Johnny. That's from 3 o'clock. Liam Coyle is the Team 33 League of Ireland legend coming your way at 4 o'clock today. And Keith Andrews in conversation with Philly McMahon will be OTB Gold from 6 o'clock. And back on your radio at 7 o'clock tonight with Stuart Lancaster last night. And tonight it's none other than the Irish rugby captain Johnny Sexton in conversation with Ger. So that is marking your card. But all the good stuff coming your way on Off the Ball and on OTB Sports on the app and on the website as well over the course of the morning. There's plenty, course of the day, plenty of it. And lots of good stuff up there as well. Do keep your comments coming into us. Plenty of reaction to the Liverpool game last night, and lots more as well besides. But I'm delighted to say that Alan Quinlan is standing by. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. We spoke about last week about the uncontracted players at Munster, and there's been maybe a couple of developments on that front, including, and maybe most interestingly, Bernard Jackman now saying that he's hearing that CJ Stander has been heavily linked with Bordeaux. Have you heard anything about it, or how likely do you think that is?
No, I just heard what Bernard said himself, that he had heard that rumour that Bordeaux were trying to sign him. I've said this, in the last couple of weeks. It is really, I have to be careful what way you word this, because everybody outside of sport are have their own challenges around COVID. But I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but for sports people, running into the last few months of the contract can be tough going, particularly the guys who are a little bit older. I think CJ Stander will get a contract, whether it's with Ireland or with Bordeaux or with somebody, he's at that level. There's lots of players who have the uncertainty of will they get any sort of a contract going forward, provincial players. And we saw a number of provincial players at the end of last season struggling to secure a contract anywhere. So it's a very difficult time for them as regards their future and where they end up going to end up playing. I think, it's obviously prompted by COVID, and the IRFU have needed some certainty around their financials to try and get the contracts tied down, particularly with the national players. So I think the last couple of weeks, those contract talks have started and they've progressed, and I'm sure some of them will progress more smoothly than others. But if Stander was to leave now, I think it'd be very, very disappointing. And
how much of a loss would he be to Munster, Quinny, if he were to go?
Yeah, he'd be huge. I think he's played 150 games for Munster now, and he's been every time he puts on the Munster jersey or the Irish jersey, that's why he's such a fan's favourite. He just seems to give everything, and there's so much energy and work rate in these performances and effort level passion in what he's trying to do. So he would be a huge loss.
And come here, would they, given his age profile and the form and quality and all that stuff, would he be another player that they'd be willing to make an exception for Johnny Sexton in terms of playing for Ireland?
I'm not sure. I think all those that suggestion and option is maybe something that's on the table now, that if the RFU can't agree with contracts with some of the top players and some of them move abroad, I think it's certainly something that will have to be looked at, particularly if they're struggling financially, and it may be something that the RFU might have to do in this contract window, if you like, that if they let some of these guys go and are playing abroad, obviously they've less management in them and control over them as regards the amount of games they play, but financially it would be huge money off their books. But I'm sure they don't want that either, and I hope to see most of the players re-sign, and if that happens in the next few weeks. But it's in the lap of the gods at the moment, Adrian. Nobody knows what will happen here. And CJ's 31 now, recently 31, I think, and it's hard for players if they get a big offer. They've got to consider it as well, but he's got to weigh up then the Munster situation. He's very, very, very attached to Munster and living in Limerick, and playing for Ireland as well. And so who knows? I'd be really sad if he was to go, but again, it's only speculation. It's only rumours, and these rumours happen all the time when players' contracts are up.
Yeah, but that happened 3 years ago when he was linked with Montpellier, and then when he signed the contract, he came out and said unfounded media reports, which can be obviously helpful in the context of things. But as you say, the landscape has changed enormously. Like if they went down that route of having to make exceptions, and as you say, it might be the thing that makes most business sense to them now, given the state of finances generally. It's a hard one to put back in the bottle again.
It is, yeah, and that's just that may not happen. Of course, there's financial worry and concern with the RFU and all the rugby unions. They can't keep going. This is another window of no crowds, and the finances that are generated from that. I really thought at this stage we may have some crowds back. There was, I was hopeful last year when it all happened that maybe in November we might see some crowds. So we're going to go into another Six Nations now. Another international window, if you like, of matches with no crowd. So it's the financial burden is going to continue for another while. The CVC money and that deal is nearly tied up. So I think that will give a cash injection into all the different unions. So maybe that will stave off the major problems from at the moment. But whatever way they look back in this, all the rugby unions and sport right across the board and businesses for sure will have lost a huge amount of money. And can they sustain that going forward?
Alan, I just wanted to chat to you about our depth chart, which we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. We concluded it yesterday with the back three. Niamh Briggs picked Hugo Keenan at fullback, Keith Earls on one wing, and Andrew Conway on the other wing as her starting back three. She had concerns over Jordan Larmour and Jacob Stockdale for different reasons. I guess defensively might be one of the main reasons for both. Would you have similar concerns in terms of starting either of those in the first Six Nations game against Wales?
Yeah, look, I think Conway hasn't played for a while, but his aerial ability is much better than both Stockdale and Larmour. And historically, and the way that we've seen the Six Nations the last couple of years, there's a lot more kicking. England have been very, very dominant, but they kick a huge amount as well. So if you pick Jordan Larmour on the wing and you play England in potentially a Grand Slam decider, this is hypothetical, well, they're certainly going to try and target him. France are going to try and target him. He's such a talented player. I find it hard to leave Jordan Larmour off my team because I can understand what Niamh is talking about, but I just think we are crying out for a little bit of X factor, aren't we? Someone who can step, someone who can pop up and just do something brilliant. Someone who can counter attack when the ball is kicked in over their heads, that can pick it up and actually, have an ambition to run back and ability to beat players. He's I think he's had issues in the air, Jordan Larmour, and that's the problem, and he's just got to keep working on that. Is it something that you can coach into players? I don't know. I think some players are just really, really naturally good and aggressive in the air, and that's my biggest. Jacob Stockdale, again, he has so much positive about his attacking play, but it's the defensive work. It's the decision in the defensive line. It's not biting down when the ball is heading out towards his winger, and just having that awareness defending, and again the aerial game for such a big guy, and he should be a lot better in the air. So you're going for a much safer option in the air. And to be fair to Andrew Conway, his speed and his attack is brilliant as well. I just think Larmour, they all have really positive parts of their game. I think Larmour's overall attack and football ability is probably the best. Stockdale is such a finisher, and Conway's all-round game is probably better than both of theirs. So I can understand where she's going for, but I find it hard to leave Stockdale out of my team.
You mentioned there that it's near impossible to coach being good in the air, especially, I guess, at this point in those players' careers. Is there anything...
If it's a technical issue with the way they're jumping, or jumping too soon or jumping too late, of course, there's technical parts of it that you can. Body language, the way you turn your body, all that stuff. But you know yourself in any sport, that real determination, fight, that never say die attitude, that having no respect for your body type attitude is hard to coach that into people sometimes. And just look at how good Rob Kearney was for so long for Ireland. But then people kind of question his attack game and not hitting the line, scoring tries regularly. So do you go for that solid, safe, secure aerial player over an attack player? I don't know. I think Ireland are crying out for attack and tries and flair, and so I think Jordan Larmour can get a lot better at that, but he's got to show it to us in some of these big games. It's not as if there's any sort of fear for any of these players going into the air. There is no fear here for them, but they've got to show more intent, more aggression, and a real kind of attitude when they get up into the air and contest balls, ones they're receiving and ones that are kicked downfield. So it is something that, desire is hard to coach on. You don't coach desire. You can talk to people about it. You can try and find ways to ignite that desire. Some guys are quite in the pitch and until they get a punch in the head, and then it's a different player you're getting, So it's just, if somebody concedes a try, if one of those wingers miss a tackle and concede a try, that fight and desire just ignites a little bit. And you've got to see that from the start of games, particularly with the importance of the kicking game and what we're going to expect in the Six Nations.
Just on the players' contracts, Quinny and Ulster signing Leonie Nakarawa in the last few days, and just looking at a 32-year-old, he signed a 1-year deal. I don't know how much money is involved, but is it reasonable to say that that's like bad business almost on his part, given his age profile, and very good business for Ulster?
Yeah, look, it's probably sometimes these cycles and windows are hard to get. Ulster may have earmarked someone for the following season to come in on a 2 or 3 year contract, and that's sometimes the way these things work. Given when you sign a player for a year, I think 2 3 years ago he was world class. He was having huge moments in games and a massive effect in performance. But since he came back from the World Cup and not turning up for Racing, coming back from the World Cup, effectively going missing, and fitness concerns, effort level, all that kind of stuff that I was talking about a minute ago. You never know what you're going to get with some of the Pacific Island players. When they get that stuff right and their fitness levels and their attitude, they can be so much better, and they can be world beaters. They can be game changers, and he has the potential to be a game changer in matches. He is 32, but Dan McFarland is taking a risk here. If the attitude of the player is right when he comes, and if he trains hard, And if he gets stuck in and gets really fit and gives that effort, well, then you may get a brilliant player for a year. But I suspect it's someone and that they've earmarked for after this year. That so it's a good deal for him, because he's gone from Racing to back to Glasgow and now gone on to Ulster. So you don't want to finish up your career moving around like that from year to year, but it's probably a chance for him to ignite his career again and get a few more years out of it.
Yeah, Andy Friend, another one who's got a couple of more years out of it, signed a new contract. Everybody seems pretty pleased with all of that. Give him a rating out of 10, Quinny. It's 3 years, almost 3 years in charge so far, and what he's achieved and how he's moved the province along. What's your sense of where he's at out of 10, let's say?
I think he's done a fantastic job. I think obviously there's been periods where they've had bad spells, and they're going through a tricky period at the moment. But I just love the way Connacht play, and I love the style and the approach and his attitude, and I think he's been brilliant for Irish rugby. And you constantly hear the Connacht players talking about the environment that they have, the feel-good factor, the buzz in the camp, and they've still got they're always going to have challenges, Connacht, and they're trying to bridge the gap with the other provinces and attract more players and develop more players. He's brought a number of players from their academy and given them their debuts in Connacht. So he believes in these young players, and sometimes it's he's the hand he's dealt is a difficult one regarding budgets and stuff like that, and the ability to bring in big names and getting the sports ground developed. And I just think his attitude and that feel good factor that he brings to Connacht rugby and Irish rugby is brilliant, and he's a really positive guy. So he knows he doesn't have the same resources as a Munster, Leinster, or even Ulster. And he doesn't complain about it. And I love his attitude. So I think he's done a brilliant job and, developed a lot of good young players. And I think they're in a bit of a transition with a lot of these young players. Some of them will kick on and get to the next level. But I really like Andy Friend, and I think his approach to the game is fantastic to see.
Are you refusing to be drawn into a player rating out of 10?
Oh, player rating. Oh, a player rating or a coach rating?
A coach rating, yeah.
Well, I it's hard to kind of at what level, at European level, at Pro 14 level,
the whole package,
and the mitigation of the challenges they have and budgets and stuff like that. I think he's a 7 or 8 out of 10 easily. I think particularly in the approach and the attitude to the way the game is played. I love the way Connacht play, and back when I played them, many years ago, I think Connacht were quite direct in their approach. We've seen a real shift in the way they play the game, and teams look at Connacht now in their attack. Their attack is fantastic, and so I'd say it's hard to give a guy a 9 or go any higher than 8 when it's about winning trophies, but given the challenges and the mitigating factors and budget-wise and all that kind of stuff, he has to pick up players from other provinces who don't get contracts there. And we've seen a number of, that at the start of this season with some of the Munster players going there, Wooden, Sammy Arnold, Conor Oliver and stuff like that. And he gives players a chance, and he's to deal that way with it. So I think a 7 or 8 out of 10. I love his attitude, and he's such a positive guy, and you'd love to play under a coach like that. You can see that kind of players love it.
Yeah, interesting fella. All right, we'll have plenty of Six Nations to chat to you about next week. Quinny, enjoy the weekend.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, William. Alan Quinlan is always there on a Friday. And a bit of a flavour for you, what's coming up over the course of the weekend on Off the Ball on News Talk from 1. It'll be from 1 o'clock on Saturday, but from 1:30 is the Saturday panel, and it's a continuation of our conversation around the future of sport in Ireland. You can check out the hashtag OTB Future for more details on that. But John's panel On the Saturday panel tomorrow is going to be Sarah Keane of the Olympic Federation of Ireland, Michael Carruth, who you know, Olympic gold medalist obviously, and also works around national schools promoting boxing, and Antonio Montero, who's from thecoachdiary.com and is a grassroots football coach. At a little bit later in the day, Sue Carty will join John she's from World Rugby and also on the IRFU committee, and she'll talk about the Ohana Zero Suicide Awareness campaign and the importance of looking after mental health in lockdown as well. That'll be from just before 3. And then after 3, it'll be a bit of whatever you have in yourself, because OTB Football Saturday will be coming your way with John, Gary Breen, Johnny Ward and Dan McDonald as well. So the full cast in tow there for that. It should be good stuff. 3 o'clock to 5. And then over on Sunday, Joe Malloy in the hot seat for the paper review. It'll be underway across OTB social channels from 11:30. That's where you can hear it first. For an hour thereabouts, and Joe will be joined this week by Gráinne McElwain and Timmy McCarthy. At 2 o'clock, live Premier League commentary, Leicester up against Leeds. Nathan and Brian Kerr are going to bring you that, and then from 4:30, more live Premier League commentary as we see the Liverpool team are back obviously, and can continue that as they make the trip to West Ham, and that'll be Stephen Doyle and Vinnie Perth. So that is your weekend on Off the Ball, and next it's time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, Phil Egan, welcome back.
It's like I never left.
You've been sitting there all along.
I have. I turned off the lights, obviously.
Right, let's get straight into it. The Barcelona presidential candidate Joan Laporta threatening to report Ligue 1 champions PSG, Phil, to FIFA. He's saying that the French club have been disrespectful, he says, in their pursuit of Lionel Messi. The PSG sporting director for his part, Leonardo, has publicly expressed that desire to bring Messi to Paris. Laporta saying that these kind of comments going unchallenged can lead to clubs destabilising their rivals and disrupting their operations, he says. So I suppose the question for you, Phil, is one we've asked a little bit in the last 12 months. Is Messi going to Manchester City? Is he joining Neymar at PSG? Or what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't think too many people would feel sorry for the comments coming out of Barcelona that, I mean, making comments about other players that play for other clubs. It's something Barcelona have done themselves. But in terms of Messi, the Manchester City deal makes the most sense for him, because he's talked about wanting to play in America as well. It just so happens Manchester City, with all the clubs they own, the group, that they have one in the US as well. So, you know, that would fit nicely, where he could do a couple of seasons in the Premier League with Pep Guardiola, a manager he knows well, and then he could make the move to America. But like, is Neymar going to be the player that sways Messi to go to Paris instead? I also think as well, with all these moves, well, you have to look at the setup in terms of, if you're a Messi, you've been living in Barcelona for years, so you're trading that up some people say you're trading it down for other cities. Like, do you want to go to Paris? Do you want to go to Manchester? I mean, obviously he's going to be well paid wherever he goes, so he's got to think about what's the best move for him and for his family. And I suppose he's thinking as well, what's the best in terms of his career? Who's he going to win the trophies with?
And I mean, look, Joan Laporta has thrown this out there that this is very destabilising, which kind of sets the scene nicely that if he does eventually have to get rid of Messi, but like, is it almost unlikely now, Eoin? I don't know what your thoughts are. Does he just end up seeing out his career? And I mean, like, it came so close last year and he never left. Is he just going to see out his days at Barca?
No, I don't think it's inevitable at all. I think that there is probably going to be, first of all, a bigger pay packet for him in further fields than Europe pretty soon. I think that once the diminishing returns start to become evident, Barcelona will have to make a business decision, whereas you will have breakaway leagues either in China or wherever it may be that have big wads of cash to spend, especially on an all-time great like Lionel Messi, just for the name alone. So I would be surprised if he retired and hung up his boots at Barcelona. I think that's coming. It's just whether or not he sees out the rest of his peak at Barcelona. And I just think he's starting to feel, and he's been feeling this for a while really, that his talents are almost wasted in a team that isn't going to contend properly for the Champions League anytime soon. Whereas at Manchester City, it looks evident that they're missing maybe one piece in a jigsaw that can go and win the Champions League. And with the experience that he has of actually getting the job done in previous seasons, I think that's the exact sort of mentality and obviously the exact sort of talent that could get Manchester City over the line. I think this would just suit all parties. They've got the finance, they've got the talent, they've got the ambition, and Lionel Messi would fit in perfectly with that.
Yeah, well, from Messi to another one of the greats, Jesse Lingard, set to join. Huh?
Messi
Lingard, yeah. He's set to join what I described here as David Moyes' high-flying hammers. Will he get in the first team, Phil?
Oh, absolutely, he could do. Yeah, obviously, like there was a stage during his career at United, young Jesse Lingard, he's now 28, by the way, where he was being called Messi Lingard because he was actually playing really well. And you know, it's not something that's been talked about much, but he's had a tough time off the pitch, and this is something that happens to footballers, and it doesn't tend to get too much airtime because people just look at what happens on the pitch and they can't understand why a player isn't playing as well. Now, Lingard hasn't actually been getting into the United team for obvious reasons because United are flying at the moment. In terms of the West Ham team, Moyes kind of started with to kind of get a bit of solidity back. He was playing 5 at the back, but now he looks very set on the 4-2-3-1. Antonio is back from injury, so there is spots available in the 3 players behind Antonio. Now, Jared Bowen for me is a nailed-on starter, playing the right, left-footed, can cut inside. Benrahma, they signed from Brentford. He was part of that exciting front 3 at Brentford last season, which included Ollie Watkins as well. But he hasn't really hit the ground running just yet. There's moments when he shows his flashes of brilliance, but he just hasn't made that breakthrough. And obviously, in the last couple of games, Moyes has tried Fornals, he's put Lanzini in there as well. So there's definitely a role in there for Lingard in one of the 3 behind Antonio.
West Ham now kind of turned the next couple of days into free spending spree. Do they sense an opportunity here to actually have a historically good Premier League season and get their highest ever finish and get into Europe? Like, you talk about those players, and there's going to be a battle for a starting spot for Jesse Lingard here, but it's also fantastic depth. And you could add Andriy Yarmolenko to the list of players you've listed out there as those attacking midfielders who have a very high ceiling. Like, should they actually be looking at Lingard plus another player or two and think to themselves, God, top 6, top 4 maybe at a massive reach is achievable?
Yeah, like I don't think they're going to finish in the top 4, but definitely there was talk of, I know we were talking earlier in the week about Edin Dzeko. I know since then it's transpired there's talk of a Dzeko and Sanchez swap deal in Italy, but they definitely are a little bit light up front in terms of cover for Antonio, who has had issues with his hamstring before. I know they play Liverpool this weekend, and he actually missed the game at Anfield earlier in the season because of a hamstring injury. So as good as he is, and I really enjoy watching Antonio play, if he does pick up any injuries and he's taken out of the team, they don't really have the cover there. I know they've sold Allaire to Ajax, but even Allaire wasn't an out-and-out striker. Because he's physically quite a tall player, people just thought he was a target man, but that wasn't him at all. So they could do with another striker. It's funny, like, you think back to the very first weekend of the season and West Ham lost 2-0 at home to Newcastle, and you feared the worst for Moyes, and you just thought, yeah, this isn't going to go well. But they've turned it around. They're really hard to beat. They're very good on the counter-attack. Obviously, Declan Rice keeps getting better. Thomas Souček has just been unbelievable. He scored a couple of goals the other night as well. But I definitely think that West Ham have benefited from not having fans there, because think of what the reaction would have been like if they'd lost that game to Newcastle. And at times as well, West Ham are quite happy to sit in and play counter-attacking football. It's very effective. It's not the West Ham way, whatever the West Ham way is. But I wonder, is this just a little purple patch that everything is going to go right for Moyes, and as soon as the fans come back in, probably next season, then things will maybe start reverting back to the norm?
We've 3 minutes here, so I want to rattle through as much of these as you can. First one, I'm totally torn on. Paul Pogba, in the form of his life at Manchester United, it seems like they're going to sit down at some point over the next little while to discuss whether he signs a new deal or not. Keep him or sell him for each of you?
I'd sell him.
On.
Oh, sorry, you're asking me as well. I would do the exact same thing, sell him as well.
Just you can't rely on him to continue this vein of form over the next while and get rid of him now.
Yeah, it's if you get rid of Paul Pogba, obviously you cash in on him, but it means you don't have to deal with Mino Raiola. And don't forget what he did on the eve of their big Champions League game against RB Leipzig. So you don't need people like that around the club. As good as Pogba's been, here we are in 2021. He was signed in 2016, 5 years. So I think that at least the price is going back up now.
Where do Liverpool finish, Phil, if they don't sign a centre-back?
Lower down. I think, personally, I think City are going to win the league. I think if Liverpool don't sign a centre-back, there's going to be games where the front three don't click and then Liverpool won't win those games. It was all well and good last night. They look good in attack, but that won't happen every week. And what gets you out of those games with the 3 points is when your defence can keep a clean sheet for you. So
do they make top four without it?
They could do, but it'd be a hell of a risk to take because no Champions League football. I don't know what that does for FSG and their budget.
Top four or no, Eoin, without a centre back?
Liverpool, of course, are going to finish top four. I think this is ridiculous doomsday scenario pushing from Liverpool fans, and I think, in fairness, I think it was tongue in cheek last week talking about the non-top four finish. Of course, they're going to finish top four. They're Liverpool Football Club.
Clip that. We'll be back to that a bit later in the season. Phil, good man. Eoin, thanks a lot. That's it for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training on driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It sure is amazing. It's 9:20 on this Friday morning on OTB AM, live every morning with thanks to Gillette giving you the confidence. Good morning start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the morning ahead. We're going to bring you a segment of Stuart Lancaster's exclusive interview with OTB before 10 o'clock this morning. Up next, Ger and Tommy are going to join us for the crappy quiz. We're back after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist? Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
And it's been a complete failure for English teams in the European formats this year, Colin.
I don't know.
Come on, it has! They had one team in the quarter-final.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Chris Mann.
Oh, you're kidding me!
September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
No! Is that right?
I know! It's not right!
Anybody else?
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's the scintillating, it's the stupefying, it's the splendido crappy quiz. Every Friday, we pit three of Team Off the Ball up against one another in a no-holds-barred quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome today's contestants. Our first contestant today is the host of a brand new OTB AM slot, Cold Cuts. Be careful, or he's going to slap out a pound of meat consisting of your very worst sports takes. If you voice an incorrect opinion, this man probably has screenshots of your social media accounts saved on his laptop. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy, Barry.
All true.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Eoin.
Our next contestant today has stopped stalking Andy McEntee and is now regularly camping outside of the house of Colm Collins. He's hoping to use the residency rule to qualify for the Clare footballers because he knows he can easily steer them to Munster glory. Give it up for the Meath Hill Billy, Tommy Rooney.
I have to stop telling you what I'm up to at the weekend, Eoin.
Would you make the Clare team?
Oh, Jesus, lads, I haven't even started thinking about that yet.
Oh.
I mean, that's the worst acting since, I don't know.
Okay, look, conversations haven't been had yet, but we'll see what happens.
You just put it out there in the ether.
You'll be switching clubs.
There's a couple of clubs sniffing around, but we have to wait and see.
We just have to add Podge Collins in this conversation to see what he thinks of it, and you know.
And what do the Meath Hillbillies think about it as well? Like suddenly it's like, oh, come and get me, plea to kill.
Well, no, it'd be a county transfer, lads. It's one club. Like there'd be no, you can train with another club, but I wouldn't be swapping clubs. I wouldn't be representing another club. Don't mind representing another county, no problem, but geez, wouldn't be leaving Meath Hill.
He says now until the money arrives in brown paper bags at your front door.
Sponsored Renault, driving around Clare. The worst acting since Tommy Wiseau, I think, is how to sum that up. Our final contestant today, to introduce him, has finally earned the respect of DMAC in the YouTube comments last week. He was described as a crisp display by Mr. Pringle. This was after this contestant romped home yet again in first place. It is, of course, the mustachioed menace, Mr. Jerry Gilroy. How are things?
I mean, you brought the same chumps, Eoin. It's a knife to a gunfight once again. My M16 is polished and ready to go.
Well, let me explain. As ever, the format is a classic crappy quiz with a series of questions on different themes, and it's on to the slip and slide of trivia, the rapid fire round. However, there is one big change to be made this week. After the pathetic performances from both Tommy and Adrian over the past few weeks, they will be forming a team today.
Oh, no.
I will be combining their scores.
This is ridiculous. Idea. That actually weakens our opportunity to knock Jar off his perch.
Not at all, because all I'll be doing, it'll be the same format. I'll just be combining your scores at the end to see if your two brains can beat Jar's one.
Okay. So it's the same thing ultimately, except for you're going jiggery pokery the maths afterwards.
So we're going to humiliate you more. That's the point.
The spit and Dublin conversation, like lumping Loud and Laois in together.
That's the way to look at me and you, Tommy, is Dublin. That's right.
Or Meath and Westmeath. No, we're the opposite, Adrian. We're not Dublin. We're the Division 4 counties that are.
I hear you.
As Pat Gilroy said, they're similar. And that's what I'm going to say about you two guys. The Cavan and Monaghan of Team OTB. Round one, the boring questions round, never multiple choice. Question one for you, Adrian. Name the last team not called Sheffield United to beat Manchester United in the Premier League.
Hold on, before Adrian answers that, what if we win individually?
You win.
Oh, yeah, you win. Yeah.
Don't be giving him extra time here.
Eoin?
The last team not called Sheffield United to beat Manchester United in the Premier League.
Correct.
It was some crap team.
Point for that.
Go.
Can I give him a hand here?
Come on, no.
No.
We're working together. We're teammates.
Disqualification immediately.
That's a good point, Tom.
Minus points.
Good point.
Come on, Adrian,
Some
you can do this.
shy team like Aston Villa. I can't write.
They're not that shy.
No. Anyone?
Arsenal?
Palace.
No, Arsenal, yeah.
Okay.
I'll take the
One
point
of
for
the
that.
lower reaches teams.
Yeah.
Whoa,
absolutely.
that wasn't a point.
I just heard the
Sounds
bell.
like a point to me.
1-0.
No, there was just a bing for somebody coming up with the correct answer, but there's no points scored there because Jared managed to shout Arsenal there. So it's 0-0, don't worry. Question one for you, Tommy. Where did Jerry Kiernan finish in the marathon at the 1984 Olympics?
I'd go second, no?
Fifth.
No.
Ninth. Your teammate would have got it, Tommy, but you've let your teammate down. No, Jerry, we've moved you to last. We're going to let the two teammates go back to back first so that you kind of know what to do. We got to give you a little bit of a heads up here.
Give an easy.
Wash your mouth out with cobalt.
Wow.
What time is it?
That is offensive, and I apologise to everybody at home who might have heard some bad language being picked up on our hot microphones with no crowds in.
Sorry, ma'am.
At the moment. Question one for you, Ger. Name the two European teams that Nakarawa has played for in his professional career to date before joining Ulster.
Racing.
And?
Northampton.
So New South Wales?
No, European.
Oh, sorry, European teams.
The answer is Glasgow Warriors.
Glasgow Warriors.
For 1 point. So no scores there in the first round, the boring questions round. Round two. is the Made in Chelsea round. After another week where Chelsea Football Club have provided at least 50% of the sports news agenda, we can only dedicate this round to Roman and Marina and the rest of our friends at Stamford Bridge. Question 2 for you, Adrian.
Spell Marina's surname.
G or A. No, that's not a question to me. You were thought that was going to be the question I asked Adrian. Never mind. Question 2 for you, Adrian. What?
Is this more to do with Made in Chelsea, the TV show, or Chelsea Football Club?
It's Chelsea Football Club. Adrian, question 2. Only 2 managers in the Abramovich era have managed Chelsea in more Premier League games than Frank Lampard. Can you name them?
Jose Mourinho.
That's one.
And Ranieri was gone too early. It's not AVB.
There's too many. There's too many. You can't go through them all. Come on.
It's not. Could it be Avram Grant? Could it be Avram Grant? Seems somewhat unlikely.
Come on. The time.
No. Hang on. There's no buzzers.
No, there is. Their time is up.
It's unlikely that you thought of Avram Grant.
I'm going to go with Gus Hiddink.
No.
It was AVB, wasn't it?
No
chance.
Carlo
Ancelotti and Antonio Conte. They both managed 76 Premier League games with Chelsea. Mourinho managed 212. So there is.
Sorry, what was the question?
Don't know, but you got it wrong.
No, what was the
managers
question?
who managed Chelsea the most times in the Premier League.
So Jose Mourinho has managed them more than anybody else.
Yeah, but you need.
And somehow that wasn't
names.
the correct.
No, you did, but you had to get both right.
You had to give me all 3.
Sorry, I actually thought you were looking for 2, but anyway, there we go.
I think he was.
Tommy, question 2 for you.
Trying to butcher me here.
Tommy, what is the last trophy Chelsea have won?
So lost the FA Cup final last year. Premier League hasn't been since 2014. Have they won a Europa League trophy?
That wasn't the answer. That wasn't the answer. Okay.
No.
Jojo in the sound booth has given Tommy 1 point for that correct answer, which definitely wasn't his answer.
But I was.
He definitely wasn't going to land on the answer.
Owen, if you think about it, how many trophies were left?
You hang on a second. If they haven't won a league in 2014, they won the league in 2017. What are you talking about?
No, the Europa League was 2019.
I know, but Tommy is like already, his logic is already flawed.
Well, no.
And there was no way he was landing
moved.
at the Europa League, let's face it. But
He's working his way out.
That's the look at the draw. That's the look at the draw.
Thanks, Jojo.
Cheers, Sure. Question 2 for you. So you gain plaudits for your German footballing knowledge in the Premier League. So, no, you didn't get that. The complete list of German managers who have managed in the Premier League: Klopp, as you said, Felix Magath, Jan Sievert of Huddersfield fame, Daniel Farke, and David Wagner. So, no points so far for your team. Adrian and Tommy are winning 1-0.
Right.
Round 3.
So, Tommy, that's you and me ahead here. I love this new format.
Round 3 is the county captains round. With county manager ratification season in the rearview mirror, it is very much captain ratification season. In this round, I'll give you the names of some GAA legends. All you've got to do is pick out the name who did not win in All-Ireland as captain. Adrian, which of the following Kilkenny legends did not instruct the crowd to give 3 cheers to the defeated opponents? Was it A, Colin Fennelly, B, Joey Holden, or C, Andy Comerford?
Look, it's a nearly impossible question.
It's a multiple choice, like. There's 33% chance you get this impossible question correct.
1 in 3 shot here.
Give it to him one more time there, because I wasn't listening.
No, do not give it to him one more time. It's not your question. He heard it.
I'm going to go with the one that I think is the least likely, Andy Comerford.
Nah, Colin Fennelly. Tommy, question 3 for you. Which of the following Kerry legends has never thanked his sponsors from the Hogan stand? Was it A, Tom O'Sullivan, B, Darren O'Sullivan, or C, Declan O'Sullivan?
When would Darren have been captain?
Now, hang on a
Declan.
second. Hang on a second.
I know Declan.
Now, just Jojo.
Yeah,
hang
Jojo,
on.
don't.
Just hang on a second.
I don't
now.
need another point.
Or
here,
if you want to hit the incorrect answer any time, feel free to do that because that definitely freaks him out.
I know Declan won.
Hang on, we didn't give the incorrect one earlier when he played the sound and it was Adrian was.
Jared, can you just give me a second to think, please? You've won 2 in a row.
You've got 3 names there.
The
I've
only
won
reason that
six in a row. Six in a row.
Tommy, don't let him rattle you. Tommy, don't let him rattle you.
6 in a row.
Go back into your corner forward spot there and take a breath. Get yourself together.
You're such a bad winner. That is why Eoin sets it up. He finds it enjoyable to see how bad a winner you are. You're insufferable. Just cue-ness for a couple of seconds.
Six in a row.
Figure out whether it's Tom or Darren. I feel like Darren may have possibly. It's Tom O'Sullivan.
That was a pretty straightforward question, wasn't it?
Do nothing.
That's pretty easy. He famously was a sub that year. Darren.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You're a bad winner.
I mean, I don't think so, Tommy. I think all that matters. We understand from the week that we've done hashtag OTB Future that winning is all that matters, particularly when it's against you two chumps.
We need a supercut of your celebration.
Sure, which of the following Meath legends has never said Tá an áthas orm an Curnshaw Glacha?
Jesus, well, there's only 7.
Was it A, Martin O'Connell, B, Tommy Dowd, or C, Mick Lyons?
Mick Lyons.
No.
Tommy
Who is
Dowd?
it, Tommy? No.
Martin O'Connell then.
Martin O'Connell.
I thought I had a vague sense of O'Connell being captain.
Tommy Dowd, former Meath Hill manager.
Tommy Dowd, definitely. I can see him. Right.
So Adrian and Tommy have combined to score 2 points so far. Sure is on nothing. Round 4 is the fun-free magic number round.
Hold on a second. You said you were adding up Tommy and Adrian's scores at the end.
We're flying it, Tommy. Listen, we're flying it. We're flying it.
No.
That's all the viewers need to know.
Stop looking like that, Eoin. Tell me that
Tommy and
I
Adrian
win.
are flying it.
Come on, Eoin.
No.
That's not fair now.
You went in.
You can't just do this for the narrative.
Tommy, don't let them split us up. Don't let them get inside your head. Come on.
Live by the team, die by the team. Round 4. I suppose you wouldn't understand. You are about to hand in a transfer request to your GA county. You've got no loyalty to your teammates. Adrian Barry can attest to that.
I don't have teammates on the county team. I've never played inter-county football at senior level.
Round 4 is the fun-free magic number round.
Alan Barger said, wait.
That under 14 cap doesn't count.
At senior level.
If Noah manages to get the number exactly right, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. I'm going to state that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper. I'm also going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. And no, there is no conferring. Yes, you both submit an individual answer, teammates. And I will go whoever gets closest to the number. The number of years Keith Higgins played senior football for Mayo, plus the number of points separating Celtic and Rangers at the top of the Scottish Premiership table, plus the number of National League titles won by Dublin in the last 10 years, plus the number in thousands of fans that will attend next week's Super Bowl. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beads. So the number of years Higgins played football with Mayo, plus the number of points separating Celtic and Rangers at the top of the table, plus the number of league titles won by Dublin in football in the last 10 years, plus the number of thousands of people that will attend next week's Super Bowl. Adrian.
49.
Tommy.
Oh, wait. Sorry. 1 second. When you said the number of thousands of
right,
people,
the number that's on your paper, Tommy.
Home here. Like, are we including the amount of thousands?
Tommy, you got on your paper. What have you got written down?
Tommy, what's your answer?
Hold up your bit of paper. We'll take 10,000 off it, Tommy. Come on.
What paper?
We'll take the thousands off.
7,044.
No, hold up your paper. What? I don't understand.
You said 7,000. Hold on.
62.
Hold on a second now, Eoin.
62.
Yeah, 44 and 7.
Hold on.
No, 44 and 7 is Tommy's
Can I give my
answer.
actual answer? It was a simple
51.
miscommunication.
Tommy's answer is 51.
My answer is 51, yeah.
No, it's not. Your answer was 7,044.
We can only accept the answer that's written on your paper.
I think you have to give him 51.
Oh, come on. This is disgusting.
Calm down.
This is disgusting.
I think you have to give him 51.
No, well, to be honest with you, it doesn't actually make a difference for your team because the answer was 66. So that means Ger gets the 2 points and either Adrian or Tommy gets the 1 point. I've given it to Adrian, which is your team anyway.
That's a good call. Yeah, that's a good shout.
So, Ger, you get 2 points there. You're back in the game.
What did Ger say?
62.
62. So, to go through
what's
these.
The answer? What's the answer?
66. Keith Higgins played senior football for Mayo for 16 seasons.
How many?
The producer has just cursed live on air, and once again apologies to young, sensitive listeners. The number of points separating Celtic and Rangers at the top of the Scottish Premiership table:
18.
23. Dublin have won 5 league titles.
I had 23. I had 5.
And the number of thousands of people that will be at the Super Bowl:
7,044. 15.
22. 22,000 people are going to be at the Super Bowl. So
I actually had 23 originally, but I thought that would be mad.
The answer, which leaves the scores on Ger 2 points, Adrian and Tommy 3 points.
But no, you said you're adding them up at the end. That's what you said.
I get to go first.
Listen, we're flying here. We've got 3 points between us.
I get to go first because I'm in the lead as the individuals.
You're going back on your word, Owen.
Yeah, come on. I have to go.
On to the final.
Yeah, I go first.
Our winner tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys, the Tom Tuchels from the Tom Cruises. It's an OTB.
I don't know if I want to play this
easy rapid fire round. The score you get in this round will be added to your score in the previous round. There will be 40 seconds for everyone to answer from the same set of questions. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with the person with the highest number of points. So in fairness, we're going to start with Ger here.
What?
No,
I am the person with the... but Ger's got 3 points. Now your rules make no sense whatsoever.
Ger and Tommy both have 2. But just for the
myself and Tommy should be going first, and then Ger last.
No. Adrian, shut up, Adrian.
We're not together.
We're not together.
We are ahead.
Adrian,
by the rules of the game,
Adrian,
Tommy.
Stop. Adrian, if you win on your own, congratulations, you won on your own. I don't need you.
It's a team effort, Tommy.
What's happening here is we're starting with Ger, then on to Tommy, and then on to Adrian. And that is how this is going to go.
Flip a coin.
That makes a coin. If you're combining me and Tommy's score, we should be going first, the 2 of us.
No, I flipped the coin. Ger versus Tommy. Ger wins a tiebreak.
This is just disgusting.
Ger, are you ready?
Can I just laugh that bit out first for a second before we start? Because I need to pull a Frank Lampard of this and somehow get it back.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Ger, your 40 seconds starts now.
That's the luck.
Manchester United signed Alex Telles from which club?
Benfica.
No, Porto. BSC Young Boys are based in which country, Tommy?
Switzerland.
Correct. Who is a Dublin hurling manager?
Matty Kenny.
Too long. How many games have Sheffield United won this season, Adrian?
3.
No, 2. What golf course is due to host the Ryder Cup this year, Ger?
Don't know.
Time.
Too long. Ireland's first game of the Six Nations against which side, Tommy?
Wales.
Correct. Name any sport in the modern pentathlon.
Fencing.
Correct. Hank Aaron was a star of which sport?
Yes, Tommy, we did it!
Baseball.
Correct. So you got 1, 2, 3, and Ger got 2 wrong. Tommy and Adrian win.
Yes, Tommy! Yes! High five it out! High five it out! Don't leave me out again.
Congratulations, well done, everybody.
Delighted, Tommy. I'm delighted we get over the line.
Well done to you both on succeeding this week. Ger, your reign is over, but I guess it did take 2 good men to wrestle away.
It's a proud day for the Meath Westmeath combo.
Did I win on my own?
We supported each other, Tommy, all the way along.
What will we call that team?
I won on my own.
Greater Meath? Great Meath?
They get 0 in the end.
Adrian got 0.
I was bringing the intangibles, Tommy. Don't worry about that. It was the stuff off the pitch that I brought to the party.
I didn't even get to celebrate this.
I'm delighted.
Well, congratulations to you both. Crappy quiz back next Friday morning. Send in your questions. Give us a DM. Tweet us at Off the Ball with your question suggestions. Congratulations to Tommy and Adrian.
Well done.
Good stuff.
Chris Martin.
Oh, you're kidding me.
September. Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know it's not right.
Anybody else? Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell?
Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
So all week here on Off the Ball, we've been running a series around the future of Irish sport. It is a vast topic. We've already touched on PE in schools, player development. We've talked about participation and dropout rates, around resources for underprivileged areas. And we're going to keep this discussion going over the coming days and weeks. We'd love your feedback as well. You can text us 53106. You can get in touch on social media at Off The Ball. If you're there on the ground, if you have any viewpoint, please do get in touch and we'll put it to the experts over the coming days and weeks. To continue the discussion right now, I'm delighted to be joined by the senior coach with Leinster Rugby, Stuart Lancaster. Good evening, Stuart.
Evening, Nathan. How are you?
Very well. This is an area that you're very familiar with. You've been, well, working with the best of the best for the last decade or so, but previous to that, 20 years ago, you were working as a PE teacher. You've worked through academy level as well, so you've seen all sides of sport at this stage.
Yeah, and I would also probably take it back to my son and daughter started playing, obviously, sport at a young age. I coached my son, well, my daughter played rugby as well, actually, from under sixes upwards. So I guess you can go from under sixes all the way through to, I guess, top-end European and international rugby. So yeah, I've covered it from every area. But the 10 years as a PE teacher were really formative in shaping my mindset on sport in general. And also, I guess, probably the 5 years as an academy manager where there was some really good coach education around that time on how to develop, identify and develop talent, and create pathways for sustained excellence.
What was your aim as a PE teacher? What did you feel your role was?
My role, I felt, was to motivate and inspire young people to enjoy sport whilst they're at school, try and give them different avenues that they could explore when they leave school, and I guess most importantly, try and give them an understanding of what a good and healthy lifestyle would look and feel like, and to give them a passion or an experience that they could grab hold of and take into further life. Whether that's anything from swimming to gymnastics to badminton to hockey to soccer to rugby to health and fitness. You name it. I coached it, really, or taught it, as I'm sure a lot of schools do also.
There does seem to be, from what we've been hearing this week, a real disparity around the country, depending on the type of PE teacher you have, as to the type of experience you're getting, whether you're getting that wholesome view, that well-rounded view that will last you, whether you want to be a serious sports person or not, or whether you just want to play at the weekend socially, or just understand how important it is for your fitness. Or actually maybe teachers who are focusing on another area who are thrown into PE. It is vital, it seems, for young children in particular to have the right person in that role as a PE teacher.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth exploring a little bit the evolution of schools in England, I guess, or in the UK, just to give you some context of how it evolved. I'm less knowledgeable about the system in Ireland, but so when I first started, so this was, so I did a sports science degree, then a teacher training degree in 1991, 92. And then my first teaching job was at a school called Sheahan High School in Moggan, right on the west coast of England. And we had Saturday, it was just a 11 to 18 comprehensive, but we had Saturday sport. So every Saturday we would have soccer teams, rugby teams, hockey teams, netball teams, all playing, even though it was it wasn't a fee-paying school. And that tradition during the 90s in England really started to die out. So I went to my next school, Kelthorpe High School, and we had fixtures. We had athletics matches and cross-country fixtures and basketball fixtures and, you name it. But it was all traditionally Monday to Friday, and Saturdays and Sundays were very much family time or in my case, I played rugby at a weekend. And gradually during the 90s, there was teacher strikes, and teachers became a bit disaffected with the support or the environments that they were working in, and as a consequence, like I said, there was these strikes that place, and a lot of the Saturday sport that used to happen in the state school system in England sort of fell by the wayside. And then the government came up with what was called a school sports coordinator scheme, and basically people were appointed to develop expertise and talent within the primary schools, and then they would network secondary schools together and basically be a support for the PE teachers or the people running the department. So there's a real consistency and an excellence and a network set up, this almost pyramid that was set up with a partnership development manager who would look after the school sports coordinators. And it really was beginning to sort of take shape. And this is now the early 2000s, I think. And then for whatever reason, the government at the time just scrapped the whole scheme. And from that point onwards, you know, we're almost back to worse than where we were when we were in the early 90s, you know, where there was less and less support for PE teachers. And you are right, it then became down to the enthusiasm and the commitment of that particular PE teacher or that particular PE department.
And it's the same as any other subject, that the personality of the teacher is going to be crucial to your enjoyment of it. It was interesting listening to Niall Moyna on Tuesday night, where he was talking about still that culture, particularly around girls, of getting the note from the parents saying, actually, they don't want to take part in PE today, can you let them skip it? And that the teacher feels under pressure to let them do that. From your point of view, I guess it's always easy as a PE teacher to deal with the whatever percentage, 50%, who love sport and who want, and it's the highlight of their week, getting out there. How did you treat the other 50% who maybe weren't that keen, who sport wasn't really something for them, to make sure that actually they got the value out of PE that would still stick with them, even if it wasn't on a competitive level?
Yeah, I think the key is to have a broad and balanced curriculum, you know, so it appeal to everyone. But equally, you know, if you can motivate and create the right sort of session plan and lesson plan, and you differentiate for people of different abilities, you know, everyone can enjoy a badminton lesson or, you know, a gymnastics lessons or whatever. If you pitch it in the right way, you make it a games-based approach, you make it fun, you make it active. You know, you pitch people with of similar ability together. You don't look to make it elitist. You actually do the opposite. You know, you make it inclusive. That was very much as I saw it, because you're right, you know, not everyone wanted to do every sport all the time. But certainly my experience for the school I was at, which was 11 to 16 state school in West Yorkshire, the uptake and the motivation to take part in PE lessons was always high. And we had a very good department, you know, we're all very like-minded. And I guess one thing that changed as well, that we made it, as the longer it went into my teaching career, the more we tried to make it less games focused all the time, more a balance between the traditional games that we'd play in England, but also the more fitness training or personal training, or the things that, you know, sometimes girls and boys would prefer to do, you know, whether it's circuit training or, you know, introduction to aerobics or to, you know, whatever it was at the time, HIIT training that you'd call it now. So that was very much our job. You know, that's your job as a teacher. It's to motivate, inspire, and try and give people motivation to want to exercise both within school, but more importantly outside of school as well.
It was interesting there, you mentioned your children when they were younger and you were helping out, I presume, when they were playing sports. Jason Sherlock was on Monday talking about Jim Gavin and how a lot of coaches of underage teams would look at Jim Gavin as an inspiration, or the mini Mourinhos who were out there. And he was making the point how Jim Gavin, as Dublin senior football manager, is obviously going to be a very different person when he goes back to Ballyboden coaching his kids' teams, because what he's doing with the Dublin senior footballers isn't relevant for an under-12 team. Yet strangely, a lot of other coaches are just looking at Jim Gavin, the coach of the Dublin senior football team, and they just want to be that, not realising it's not relevant for that particular age group. I'm sure you get lots of people coming to you for advice around coaching. How much do you feel of what you're doing, say, with Leinster, with the elite players right now, is relevant for coaches watching on who are involved in underage teams?
It's not hugely. I mean, obviously, it depends on, you know, there's a sliding scale here. You know, what you do with an under-6 team is different to what you do with an under-10 or under-12 team, is different to what you do with an under-17, under-18, under-19 team. So it depends very much on the age range that you're coaching. But, you know, my belief is, certainly my philosophy at the time of coaching, you know, Daniel and Sophie's team was to make it as inclusive again as possible, you know, and make it fun. You know, it was a long, long way. You know, when you're coaching an under-10 team, it's a long, long way from what professional rugby looks like. You know, you want to make it safe, enjoyable, fun. And, you know, what they really enjoyed was obviously getting the kit and feeling part of a team. But, you know, the result, you know, with all due respect to the level at the time, was irrelevant, really. You know, and But you would see, you're right, you would see teams, you would see coaches who would constantly be berating their own players on the sideline, or the referee, or, the win at all costs mentality, which was just, a nonsense, really, I thought. I would spend a lot of time with the parents as well, trying to help the parents help the children as well. So I would do a lot of sort of parents' evenings and try and explain some of the techniques that we're doing, or some of the things that they can practice in their own time, because the kids would come, say, on a Sunday for 2 hours of mini rugby. And there's a great book called Finding the Champion in Your Child, and how to get the best out of your child and how to ask the right questions. So you're not that super keen parent on the sideline who's living their lives through their children, So, and we were big on fun, and the bit kids like as well is the post-match bit in the bar or in the clubhouse, you know what I mean, where you're having a bit of crack with your mates, and you're eating your pie and peas, as it was in West Park, and so it was the package, really. We went on tour again. Did it matter if we win or lose? No, not really. But you ultimately wanted to develop them as people as well, and see them grow, and that's the beauty of sport. It teaches you a lot of lessons about life in general, and that's why, obviously, I'd be biased. That's why I think young people playing sport is crucial to life skills.
It's a hard balance, I'd imagine, when you're having those conversations, though, with parents, when you have, say, particularly talented players who are starting to get selected on representative teams, who maybe can start thinking about a future in the game, whereas their child may not be at that level, but there are other skills and life skills that they can learn by being part of that team. Yet the focus so often is just on the elite guy. Did you find that difficult as a coach to get that balance?
No, I didn't personally, but I can see the point you're making. But I think that, again, it depends on the sport. But if you take a sport like rugby, that sort of differentiation between the ones who are going to get selected for representative teams or into sort of sub-academy or academy pathways, it only really happens around about 14, 15, 16 years old anyway. And even then, there is still, I could name you hundreds of players who were elite or perceived elite at 16 who never really went on to make it. And also, equally, I could name hundreds of people who weren't that super talented at 16 who went on to make it to play professional rugby. So, it's rugby very much, and a lot of sports are late specialisation sports. And the more sports that you can play as a young person, the better. So, I would encourage my kids to play basketball, tennis, badminton. They went to gymnastics classes, swimming, and I wasn't too fussed if they were elite or not elite. I just wanted them to have a really rounded perspective of sport and a really rounded experience. And also, if you spot that sort of sense of the parent becoming involved, who thinks their child should be on a pathway to greatness, again, you can do a lot of work by just educating the parents about how to help support their child and not make it, so black and white in terms of success or failure, because it's never black and white.
In terms of specialisation then, would you have seen any sort of trend through your time, even working with Leinster now, where there's an awful lot of players coming through and there's this brilliant academy system, and even going back to when you were at the academy system in Leeds, would you have seen any trend of players who specialised from an early age to a late age, or players who were playing soccer and GAA to 15, 16, but it didn't hamper their rugby career? Or is it the other way, where actually a lot of players coming through are focusing fully from 14, 15 on the one sport?
No, I would say typically in England, or certainly in the academy system I was involved in, the specialisation into rugby only really truly happened around about when they left school at 18 and 19. Most of the time they were doing a variety of different things. And actually, I'd argue strongly that the best players are the ones who actually had the broadest experiences in different sports. The invasion game of rugby, it's not exactly the same as other invasion sports, but the concept of space and playing to space and identifying space in basketball or in soccer or in hockey or in hurling or Gaelic football, they're all the same sort of concepts, really. So the more you can play and the more you can get that feel, the better, really. And some of the best footballers and rugby players, if you like, who've got the best decision makers are the ones who played the most sports and got that rounded skill set. And then, yes, you do narrow it down around about 19 or 20. But a lot of people, I mean, England, there used to be an England under-16 team, and eventually, within the pathway, we did away with it because it was just creating false hopes and false impressions on players, because the number of players that came through England 16s to England 20s was down to about 10%. You can only really start to truly identify talent in rugby, for me, around about 20, 21 years old. And I say, the same thing. There's a lot of players I've coached at 18 who are perceived to be not good enough, who, just with another couple of years, a bit more experience. And clearly, in sport like rugby as well, the physical element does play a part, there's no doubt. So physical genetics, if you like, but also the environment that people are brought up in plays a part. And ultimately, the opportunity that players get plays a part.
Yeah, that conversation when they're 16 and they're the superstar of the team, and it's still a long way away, but they're looking at a Jordan Larmour or a James Ryan. It's hard to point out that they're almost the freaks of the system, that they're making that breakthrough as 19, 20-year-olds. So for the vast majority of players, actually, it is 22, 23 when you're finally physically ready to be a professional rugby player. Yeah, but also... There's a study done on the serial Olympians, the ones who've won the gold medals, like not just one Olympic cycle, but 2, 3, 4 Olympic gold medals. And the ones, and it was Anya McNamee who did this. She works out of DCU, I think. And she talks about the rocky road. The people who've had no obstacles in the way on their pathway through to the top end, usually the ones who don't have the resilience or the character or the mindset to come through when adversity strikes. Whereas the people who've had to fight their way through the rocks, and it could be, I don't know, non-selection, it could be an injury, it could be whatever, who've had to prove people wrong, they're the ones who typically come through. And the study showed that those serial gold medalists, they're the ones who always had worked their way through the rocky road. So actually, if parents come to me and say, listen, he's really disappointed not to have been picked, I'm going, this is a good thing for him. This'll help him in the long run, because he'll have to, start reflecting on his own level of performance, what he can do better, and so on and so forth. And my own son would be an example. He hasn't got picked for any age grade teams. He's a reasonably talented player. He's finally just broken into the England 20 squad, but not having played in any age grade teams before then. And I kept saying to him, stick in there, because it's it'll get you resilience and determination to get in there, and he's got his chance now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.